Njoroge. This is the National Parliament of Kenya. Assembled here are all members of the 13th Parliament, eager to move the wheel of the country. And everything is about economy, economy, economy. And you are the custodian of our central bank. So we will listen to you very keenly. Where there are questions, we'll put to you, and we can be able to move at the same level as everybody else. I will not ask you questions when you finish, but I'll want you to tell us why the quality of our new currency is so poor. It lasts, the small currencies like 50 shilling notes and 100 don't last more than 2 weeks in quick circulation, especially when you go to markets like Ikomba, like Karatina, like Chwele, and so on. Is there any problem with our quality of currency compared with our neighbors? Karibu.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Bwana Speaker. I want to begin by congratulating all of you on your appointment and mandate from the people of your respective jurisdiction, and indeed the people of Kenya, to your new 5-year term in the context of the 13th Parliament. And Bwana Speaker, congratulations in a special way for leading us, and you please continue to lead us appropriately. It's also nice to be here because I have seen a lot of you on TV. So, and it's one thing to see you on TV, it's another thing to see, he's really tall, or vice versa, you know. So I think it's good to see you, and to also begin the day and your term worried or thinking about the key issues of the economy. Your mandate revolves around the economy. And I think it is important to start with that, and I'm delighted to be with you. It's part of our mandate as the Central Bank of Kenya to be advisor to government. So I stand before you because you've called me to you. You didn't summon me. You just called me. And it's my responsibility to answer that call. And I want to assure you that as often as you call me, I'll show up. And I'll explain things, and I think Bwana Speaker can can actually attest that in his previous responsibility, when they called me, I was ready to talk about whatever they wanted. So we are there. So thank you very much. Now, I'll go rather quickly over some things, but I think we can open the discussion at the end of it. Although you can stop me if there's a particular burning question that comes to you about the economy. So the first point to make is Kenya is not a project. Okay, Kenya is not a project. Those of us that think of Kenya as a project, I think, have a different narrative. The way we see it is Kenya is that ship there, you know. So it is we are on a journey, we are on a voyage. So really, MV Kenya is what we are talking about. And as it sails, there are certain things it wants to accomplish, the distance. So you have the dashboard. And from what you've been hearing and telling people during your campaigns, and etc., and also as citizens, economic growth is an important thing. You want to see the country growing. And we as economists just love to talk about economic growth. And we say it's 8%, it's 5%, it's this. But it's not the only thing that matters. You also have been talking about cost of living. That's another element in your dashboard. And also other things about health, education, For instance, I think a lot of you, even when you talk about the cost of living, how does it impact you? And I can assure you that it impacts you a lot because let's say somebody has a bill at a hospital and they cannot afford it. And then they come to you, etc. So the issue of health, the health outcomes and education outcomes are extremely important. And then infrastructure. So you have infrastructure, roads, we are talking about the various, even the SGR roads, but roads, not just new roads, even, are the roads, are there potholes in the roads? Are they tarmacked? I think we have a whole set of issues. By the way, I see a lot of you writing notes, which is good, but I think I would also tell you that you will get the slides. We'll make sure that they come to you circulated appropriately. But anyway, it's good to write notes on this. But there are some things that hold us back. So this thing is sailing, but what holds us back? What draws us back? I think there are some things that, and the first I think is corruption. Corruption is a net loss to the economy. Yeah? So if you have, corruption will benefit one person, but it is a huge loss to the entire economy. So that holds us back. It's an anchor. I think we know that. There's a big net loss, which is pending bills as well. When you have pending bills, you know what happens. However they are created, however they are generated, it ends up, let's say the contractor, next time he'll price, instead of pricing it at 100, he'll price it at 120 because he expects that he won't get it on time, etc. And so there's a big problem there, and it also allows you, it's an opening for corruption, etc. So that's another issue. High inflation, another big problem, which holds us back. And then some of the things that may lead to weak institutions. So think of KRA or central bank or even the police when they end up becoming poor, meaning, or the judiciary. So they weaken, they cannot deliver on their mandate for whatever reason. And I think Kenya has an entire history of strengthening institutions and then breaking them, and then strengthening them. So we need to be sure that we protect the institutions through and through. I also wanted to talk about the poor environment that may be their environment in terms of the environment out there, but also other things like business climate, etc. So all those things hold the MV Kenya back from sailing. Now, the sails that are there in this boat, they are actually fiscal policy. There are three in particular: fiscal policy or fiscal, the outcomes or the fiscal policy or implementation of fiscal policy, financial policies, which is more like ours. So fiscal is all about the budget, etc. We mention it. Financial is more about banking and so forth. If it is working well, if interest rates are working well, savings will happen. People are sure of their money in banks, etc. And also on the external side. So think of exports, imports, think of foreign currency, think of all those things. Those are the three sails in the economy. And if they are well trimmed, the boat will sail very quickly, despite there being, the wind not being strong, etc. But then there's another element there known as debt. And you can see it, it's the keel in the boat. The keel makes sure that the boat doesn't topple over, right? So if the wind blows it in a particular way, the keel makes sure that the boat stabilizes. But if the keel is too big, it can actually capsize the boat. And that's what happens when debt becomes balloons beyond compare. Then it becomes a problem that has to be dealt with. So the keel cannot just be randomly anything. So we have to manage debt so that it helps us instead of hindering us. So colleagues, what I'll do is I'll talk about MV Kenya, and some of these issues, I'm going to touch on them. And later on, if you want to have more specific questions, I can obviously deal with them. The slide that I want to show next is to show you where we are, where we were in July. This one, every 2 months we do a survey of market perceptions, right? Now, you have a sense or a pulse of the economy in your jurisdiction, in your constituency, in your county, etc. We, every 2 months, take the temperature, the perception of people around the businesses, really, around the country. And we ask them, what is their sense of optimism in Kenya's economic prospects? We did this in July, just before the elections, right? And we had also done it in 2017, just before the elections. And what we found very interesting is in 2017, so it's banks and non-banks, but the results are very similar. In 2017, you remember the previous contentious elections, but it was even before that. Only about 26% of banks, and indeed only 35% of non-banks were optimistic about the economy. So 25 or 35%. And indeed, in July of this year, it was just the reverse. It was about 80% of banks and around 73% of non-banks. So we are making the point that actually, even as we are coming to the elections, there was a lot of optimism in the country. And this is, in a sense, let's say, the break between politics and economics. So people wanted to just go, do their economic things, etc. Even as you were doing the campaigns, etc. People are focused on their things. They're listening to you, but they want to go ahead with the economy. This, to me, is interesting. We are doing another survey now, and in about a week or so, or 10 days, I'll tell you what the outcome is of the survey now after the elections. So, a few issues. The economy, how strong is it growing? And the slide on the board now gives you details about the growth. Remember, one of the outcomes we talked about is economic growth, GDP growth as we call it. It's true, I've made the point before, and I continue to make the point that you cannot eat GDP. You cannot eat GDP. So even as we as economists talk about GDP, we need to temper that, because it's not GDP that people are interested in. The issue is these incomes that are measured here, are they helping people? That is the big question. But it's a way of looking at the economy in totality. And there you can see last year, even though last year was hard, that's 2021, or you can even begin in 2020. 2020 was the first COVID year. We grew. Actually, in 2020, we just were flat, 0.3%, decline of 0.3%, so flattish. And then in 2021, we rebounded at 7.4. And in the first quarter of this year, it grew at 6.8. And we are expecting that this year, we are going, and those are the numbers at the bottom, will grow at 5.4%. 5.4%, frankly, is a strong growth relative to other countries. It may not be the strongest that Kenya has delivered, but in the circumstances of the economic situation around the world, that is a very strong level of growth. I want to show you the next slide, which is just showing you a long-term trend of growth, and that is the dashed line. So it goes from 2010 to 2021. So 2021 is the 7.5 we mentioned. But you can see that growth rate has generally been around 5%. So around 5%, that's what it is averaged. That chart also shows you the contributions of growth, which are the sectors that are driving growth. And I think the one that really sticks out is the reddish one, the brown one, and that is services. So services really is, we've moved from agriculture, and now agriculture is the bluish one. You can see the services is the one that is dominating. So when we talk about ICT, when we talk about hotels and accommodation, trade, retail, etc., and all the other services, education, health, that is really now what Kenya is becoming. So we've moved away from sort of the one sector agriculture. It's still important, but we're just saying that it is interesting to see where the growth is coming from. Let's move on to the next. I mentioned in passing that the world is a rather harsh place today, very bad place. Meaning world economy, there are a lot of problems in the world economy. The first of this is that the world economy is likely to, the growth rate is falling, meaning it's slowing down. There's even talks about recessions, a recession in the advanced economies. And this shows you, this was done by the IMF. It's a standard table that most economists are familiar with, the World Economic Outlook. And you can see world growth, that's the blue column in July. July numbers was projected at 3.2. Actually, in about 2 weeks, they are going to issue a new projection, and we expect that 3.2 will be scaled down even more. The world is actually, the world economy, the global economy is worsening dramatically. You've heard about inflation at critical levels, but even growth is shrinking in these places. I don't want to talk too much about this slide, but I just wanted to make the point that the global growth is expected to be weaker. And therefore, we in Kenya, we are connected to the rest of the world. We need to be appreciative of that and take the right measures. I want to talk about inflation in Kenya. One of the items that we mentioned a moment ago about the cost of living. And the dashed line is the number, the numbers that are announced and are circulated at the end of every month. So the last number was 8.5%, and that was in August. And we expect that this going forward it will remain elevated around 8.5, maybe even higher, particularly given that there has been changes in the price of oil, petroleum, and that will push inflation higher. But that is well within sort of the scope of the things that we are doing. So we are not letting this go by its own. We need to be careful of the implication more generally, as you put it, on the cost of living. To be clear, the things that have been pushing up inflation in Kenya, first and foremost is food inflation. Now that is your various products, including the non-vegetables, but obviously a lot of vegetables in there, unga, sugar, etc. And then of course fuel. So next slide is interesting because we just talked a moment ago about 8.5. That's where we are in Kenya. What about the US? Where are they? And the US, if you look, that's the red line, they're actually at 8.3. So inflation in the US is exactly like us. In effect, and I'm going to use this line, that used to be us. So in the US, it's 8.3. In the UK, it's 9.9, and it's going to break 10. So it will be in the double digits, and in the US also, it may end up in the double digits. Eurozone already at 9.1. The point is, these numbers are, let's just say, anathema to the advanced economies, because they used to have inflation at 2%. They are trying to get it to 2%. Now they are way above us. So that's what I'm saying. That used to be us. When we are struggling with high levels of inflation, and they are on the low levels, and us and saying, look at the less developed countries, inflation is high there, etc. I think we can teach them a lesson or two, but let's keep it to ourselves for now. Yeah. So the bottom line here is that inflation has become endemic in the advanced economies. And we know why. First and foremost is the price of oil in those countries. Secondly is first was the problems with the supply chains that were there, meaning they were unable to deliver products as needed in the quantities, even timber and things like that. Prices were more than doubled, etc. As a matter of fact, the next slide shows you some interesting products in the global market. So, for instance, palm oil, that is the yellow one. Palm oil goes into your edible oil, it goes into the soap, it goes into things like that. Yeah, a lot of the household things. And if you remember, there was a time some palm oil importers or makers of edible oils were complaining about foreign exchange shortage, etc. Actually, what they didn't tell you is their problem was not foreign exchange foreign exchange availability. What it was is actually the price had really shot up in the global markets, and Malaysia had banned the exports because they wanted to protect themselves, right? So we had problems importing those things. But anyway, now the price has come down, and therefore you'd expect that the prices of those products or more, or whatever it is, the Blue Band, all those other products that are made, or soap that are made from this sort of oil will come down. I don't want to talk about too many of the others, but you can look at them. The point to make is that since June, the global prices of a lot of the things that we import has begun to come down. And it will continue, we hope. And so by December, we'll have much better landed prices. As a matter of fact, the next slide is about oil. You know, this is Marban oil, which is our benchmark oil. And you can see it had gone as far as $130 a barrel. That was in March. And now it has come down to about $93 a barrel. The expectation is that this will come down even more, to the point where we won't have to have the subsidies. You understand? So it's true, we eliminated the fuel subsidies on the I guess the super, etc., right? But on also the other products, including diesel, etc. So you have the price coming down, and therefore the gap is narrowing. So the pressure on the consumer and indeed on the government becomes less and less. But anyway, that's the expectation, but let's wait and see. Now we come to another set of items that is important for you, fiscal. I remember I talked about in that first chart, that first picture, and I really think that picture has a lot. And I'll be, in our conversations in the future, I'll keep bringing up that picture. I talked about fiscal policies or the fiscal accounts, etc. And the idea that is one of the sails that are catching whatever is there, you know, the favorable winds, and pulling MV Kenya forward, or for that matter, any other country. So let's look at what is the overall fiscal performance through time. And I think the first place, we call it the fiscal balance, right? The deficit, as it were. And that is the red line. Generally, when we measure the deficit, we measure it against GDP. So it's not enough to say it is so many Kenya shillings, because the economy is growing. So you measure it, you scale it against GDP. And so, for instance, in 2020, 2021, which is 2 fiscal years ago, it was 8.4. So 8.4% of GDP. That was the deficit, and that's what we covered. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with this, because most of you are in I see people who are in the budget committee before, and other committees. You know, I also see, anyway, so I think you're familiar with this sort of scaling. But I think it is important what is important here? The blue is revenue and grants, also as a share of GDP. And then the gold is the expenditures. And you can see there's a sort of an increase, there's a wedge between them, right? And that is the deficit. So actually expenditures have risen. It's true, in later years, revenues have fallen as a share of GDP. That is the crux of the problem. Now, it didn't happen yesterday. You can see there was an increase. When I mean yesterday, I mean over the last, let's say, months or last year. You can see it had gone even in 2016, 2017, it was as high as 9.6%. And it came down. And so this indeed shows, if there was one chart that you want to say is the scorecard of all of us as a country in terms of fiscal performance, this is it. And one can say that things have tightened, meaning things have worsened in later years, but I think one has to understand why. And I think one of the issues towards the end is COVID. COVID required us, when we were dealing with COVID, it required us to spend a lot more, even as revenues were falling. Remember, the economy shut down in many ways, right? Remember, we didn't even have services. I told you services is now the leading sector. All those were shut. So in effect, we were in a sort of a quote-unquote survival mode. And I think the point here is that that's why the deficit increased. But now we have to take it back to where it should be. The next chart shows us what that means. So just to tell you more or less what this, so the red is the actuals. So remember I said that in 2020-21, fiscal year 2021, the deficit was 8.4. So that's the middle 8.4. And then the next year, which is the last fiscal year, the tentative number is 6.1. 6.1 is a significant improvement. However, there's a little catch here. This does not include the pending bills that may have been accumulated and not paid. So this number may need to be adjusted by that amount to correctly reflect the actual, let's say, commitment of resources that government took. But the direction is clear. The path that had been chosen or that has been chosen by government over time, medium term, is one that is the green one, is one that would bring us back down to stability less than in the order of 3%. 3% in 5 years. 3% of GDP, which is a sustainable place to be. So this, to me, is where you want to go. The issue is, can we deliver on it? And if we can deliver on this fiscal plan, consolidation plan, I think you would have achieved one of the, let's say, you'd be one of the largest successes for our country into the future, and indeed through time. Now, if we had looked a little more at the graphs that I had shown before, don't go back, but it's interesting to see that there has been moments in the past that actually we had strengthened our fiscal performance. So it is not impossible to strengthen our fiscal performance. Then we talk about debt. This is another topic that you are familiar with. Debt. The question is, where is our debt? Meaning, is it, how painful is it? You all know, and you've been told, as somebody was telling me today, that your own, let's say, in your own constituencies, you asked about debt. And people on the radio will ask about this. Here is a long series about the evolution of Kenya's public debt. Again, it's scaled against GDP. And you can see there was a time it was at 64%. That was in 2000, 2002, 2003. And then it came down to 38% in 2007, 2008. And now it's gone back up to 69%. Now, again, the question is, if you ask yourself, How much of this is domestic and external? Actually, it's about 50-50. That's not the consideration. The issue is total. It's closer to 60 to 70%. And the question is, can we bring it down? The answer is yes. We did that before. We did that in 2002. We brought it down to 38%. It took like 5 years, but like everything, it's all about being consistent. You don't run the marathon in let's say 10 minutes. You are there for 2 hours and you are steady and you train for it. That is what this is. This is a marathon, dear colleagues. Now, I'll mention a few things. Is it a problem? Well, it is a problem for the reason I didn't mention it, but I kind of alluded to it. When we looked at MV Kenya, the first slide that I showed, there was that debt issue. And I say debt is used to stabilize MV Kenya. So for instance, when we were going through the COVID-19 and basically we couldn't raise that much revenues, etc., the only way we could get away with it was to borrow. So we borrowed concessional funds from the IMF, the World Bank. You know, it is 20, 30, 40 years repayment, 2%, actually less than 2% interest, etc. So very concessional. And that's how, so in a sense, it's like you also, you know, when you're in a tight spot and you want to, so you can borrow a bit, but you want to be sure that you don't overborrow. So here's the case, and even personally, when you borrow, you have to get to a point where you say, oh, wait a second, I think I've overborrowed. And I need to be careful and begin to repay this, maybe begin to repay the more expensive debt, etc. But I think the first thing that happens is when you begin to, your repayment becomes a large share of your revenues. And this applies, for instance, if you borrow mortgage, right, a mortgage, right? You know, and I'm sure, well, maybe it's not you, but the people that come to you, the people that work for you, and you advise them, you tell them, don't borrow. I mean, your repayment should not be more than a third of your income. There's a general rule. This is a general rule, financial sort of management. 30%, right? No more than that should be going to repayment of loans, etc. So if you do that for the country, you get this so revenues is what we are earning, that's our income. And then debt service, yeah. So you can see there was a time it was 33%. It came down to 16, 15%. And now it's up, you know, in the 50% range, above 40%. So clearly we are tight, yeah. So every shilling that we collect in revenues, 40 cents, or every 100 shillings, 40 shillings go to debt service. So you begin to ask yourself, but wait a second, what about salaries? What about medicine? What about building roads? So the point is, like, you would also need to worry about this. If you had this problem personally, you sort of say, hey, wait a second, I do need to, I'm not at a point where I'm falling, I'm collapsing, but surely I need to do something about this. So it's a bit like you or me when you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, you know, you're doing well, but you need to exercise more frequently. Yeah? And you don't like the exercise, but you need to do it. Otherwise, things will be worse in a year's time, etc. So that's really gives you a good snapshot as to where it is. I wanted to give you also a sense of where things are relative to other countries, but this I'll do very quickly. And it is this slide. The blue is the advanced economies. So generally advanced economies can carry debt much higher than us. So Japan, you know, etc. They can all go much higher for many reasons. These are discussions that we economists love to engage in. But I think as of others, say, emerging markets, lower, and Sub-Saharan Africa, even less. Meaning our debt carrying capacity is not at the level of the others. And I think it's understood, right? Again, using the analogy of running the marathon. If I haven't trained enough, I cannot really keep up with Kipchoge. And Kipchoge will stay for 2 hours and he's running very fast. I cannot keep up with him even for 1 kilometer. And now if you have trained a lot more, you can stay with him for a little longer. So I think that's the sense we can discuss it, but I wanted to tell you that not all countries have the same carrying capacity, and that is important for you to appreciate. What are the economic consequences of high debt? You know this, but I thought I would at least remind you. First, it narrows the fiscal space. So I explained it in the context of you have less room for other expenditures. And that is very important for you. Yeah? It's very important because your job is not just to repay debt. Your job is to make sure that the lives, and my job as well, is to actually affect the lives of the 50 million Kenyans that we are responsible for, that have given us the respective mandates. So that is important. Then, of course, it limits the room. We call it fiscal buffers, but it just means that at times you need to allow yourself to spend more than you are bringing in as in revenues. So like during COVID, we needed to spend more, but we didn't have room, so we had to borrow. So that sort of counter-cyclical policy, which is extremely important, is that room is limited. But importantly also, it increases the interest rate structure, or rather interest rate, basically, raises interest rate, meaning people are less interested in lending to you. You become higher risk from their perspective. And I think the point is that will end up ruining many things, including innovation, productivity, etc. Balance of payments. This is now talking about external. Again, this is the other, let's say, the other sale that I talked about, external sector. We've talked about the fiscal. I'm now talking about the external, and I'll talk towards the end about the financial. Exports have been growing okay, actually, quite strongly. Growing around 15%, over the, but I think specifically, if you look at them, 2021, 2022, the only one that looks a bit odd is horticultures. And horticultures, actually, the problem there was avocados. I'm an avocado farmer, and I know a lot about avocados. And the problem I understand is it's the exports of these things, right? There was the problem with China, now that has been fixed. So we expect this to reset itself, although I'm told that the problem with avocados is they've been stolen. Yeah? So you go to the farm and somebody was there before you the night before, I don't know how this works, but anyway, let's leave the avocados alone. And then imports have also been growing well, yeah? And I think it is important to note the largest growth was from oil, petroleum. Again, remember I showed you the graph of how high the price of oil had gone. So basically, oil has been the one that has been driving, pushing, even as exports have grown, imports have grown even more because of oil. Yeah? The others you can see, chemicals, manufacturers, all of them are showing that the economy is dynamic, meaning the economy is moving well. But I think the issue here is the drag from the imports of oil in various ways, as I explained. Diaspora remittances are an important component. That has been growing very well. This actually really helped us during COVID. Our fellow Kenyans out there sending money home, that has been strong. Now, I know the last few months, there has been, let's say, stabilization And indeed, last month, a decline, modest decline from 312 to 310 million US dollars in the month. And the reason for that is twofold. One is there's a general, let's say, seasonality. It will pick up as we go into the next, into October, November, December, as we do that, right? So there's seasonality, people sending money home according to the season, towards Christmas, school fees, those sort of things. I think we understand that. But another thing which we have seen, not just about Kenyan remittances, it's actually globally, is that the people in the remitting countries, and in particular the US, they are sending less money home because they're under a lot of economic pressures themselves. So the cost of living for them has really pushed them hard. But anyway, just something to note, and at this point we are still grateful to our brothers and sisters, wherever they are, that they are sending these remittances, which remain, they are much more important than any of our exports. Tea, coffee, horticulture, much more important. And I think that it is good to see that they still have a connection with our country. This is a long-term item that we need to talk about. Tourism is picking up. I think this, I don't want to say too much in the interest of time, but I think it has picked up quite well. And there was a time recently that I'm sure you couldn't get any place in any of the hotels in the coast or even in Masai Mara, etc. So those numbers are coming on okay. What is the bottom line? The bottom line here is that the current account balance, which is what puts everything together, so exports, imports, remittances, everything, then you have a balance, sort of like the bottom line, has been, we have a deficit relative to the GDP of about 5, for this year we are projecting, well, last year it was 5.5% of GDP. And to July it's 5.1, and we are projecting that to be 5.9. Now, I always make the point that the sweet spot for us is 5%. So we are a bit on the higher side, but it's around where it should be. So 5.9 isn't a problematic thing, particularly because we are financing it through other means, capital inflows, portfolio inflows, etc. And you can see, as we say, tumetoka mbali, look at 2014. Yeah, 2014 was almost 10%, and even the year before. So I think the point I'm making here is that the current account is in relative balance, and the next slide shows you where we are on the foreign exchange. You can see in terms of US dollar equivalent, it had peaked at 8.8 billion, and now it is at 7.3 billion. But this is still like 4.3 months of import cover, which is relatively adequate. But you can see it has fallen from 5.2, 5.3, but we maintain it at around where it is, not so much because we are targeting anything, but because this is we in the central bank generate these reserves through the government's loans. So the government borrows in US dollars, and then we repay their loans in US dollars or foreign currency, and that's how we generate our foreign exchange. It is adequate, etc. The question which you have is, and you have been asked by others, but wait a second, why is the shilling falling? So, is it falling? Yes, it is falling. Is it falling dramatically? And that's where the issues are. Now, there's a slide that I'm showing you, which is it shows you the major currencies against the US dollar. So you can see all those reds, all those currencies, they are depreciating against the US dollar. And if you do one index of the major currencies against the US dollar, it's that index on the left, the green one that says 14.4. Basically, the US dollar has been strengthening dramatically against all other currencies. So the US dollar is on one side and everyone else is going down. That is I think politically, and Speaker, you'll forgive me if I dabble into political words. That is the U.S. economy might. Yeah, I said economy. I was going to use politics. There's a word about it. Yeah, this is the. So, in a sense, this is the imperial aspect of the U.S. dollar. That's the politics I wanted to avoid, but I think you allow me to just say that. So, yes, so you have the dollar strengthening against everybody else. Sure, even the euro, the pound, 14, 15%. So I think the point here is we have to understand what is going on in all the markets. So when we ask ourselves, why is Kenya? Then we have this slide, which is our countries, or rather African currencies. And you can see that we are the circled one, we are at 6.2, so we have depreciated, and this is January to date. So we depreciated by 6.2. However, you have others, you have the Uganda shilling, it is 7.7, Egyptian pound, Kwacha and Cedi, you can see them on that side. And then on the other side, you have the Tanzania shilling, Nigerian naira. We can discuss each of these currencies, where they are coming from, obviously offline, because a lot of it, there are other things that are going on, such as where they were last year. So for instance, when you look at the Zambian kwacha, which is appreciated by 7.6, last year actually it has depreciated like by 20% plus. So it is in a sense correcting after that. So I'm making the point that we are in the middle of the road, 6.2. And I think in some sense what we are trying to do is to avoid significant movements in the currency. So what we do is we allow it to move according to market forces, but we intervene to minimize the volatility. Volatility is what ruins everything. So we want to make sure that whatever happens, it depreciates or appreciates, gently, without any sort of significant, so that you can plan better, as opposed to it moving in one day by 2% or 10% or whatever else it is. So I just wanted to make the point, because this is an accusation that has been leveled against us in the central bank, that we are in some ways throttling the foreign exchange market. That's not true. What has happened is that at times the banks have been misbehaving. They don't always follow the rules. And so yes, we have had to deal with them to make sure that they follow the rules. They have certain responsibilities as in the market that they have to follow. For instance, make sure that they have two-way pricing, make sure that they provide minimum quotes for $500,000 US dollars, etc. So if that works well, then the market itself will provide itself with let's say the balance. It will be self-correcting and we won't have an issue. But I think the point is that particularly as we are coming into the elections, there are obviously some people that had other ideas, and they were trying to, in a sense, benefit from the fears that you have, that I have, that everyone else has, and in a sense, that's what we were, let's say, opposing in terms of making sure that the markets operate as they should. I want to finish quickly, so I'll skip some of these other slides. Just a word on this slide. The national payment system is so important to us. And we as Kenyans want to improve this national payment system. And we want to have a secure, fast, efficient, and collaborative payment system that benefits all Kenyans. And so there are some things we've done. We have a strategy which we can discuss, but it's available on our website, etc. I want to say a few words about banking before I finish, but maybe even I'll skip this financial inclusion slide. Let's go to the vision of the banking sector. And I'm happy to see some faces I recognize that we discussed some time ago. the Maneno of interest rate caps. If you remember, we were adamant, we had differences of views, etc. We put it in place, you put it in place, and we told you it wouldn't work. It didn't work. We told you that there were some things that we needed to do. We put them in place, in particular this thing of the vision of the banking sector. And this vision is important because we say that we want, I'm not going to go into all the details, but we want a responsible and disciplined sector. So customer centricity is very important, which is a big issue. It was one of your key issues. And actually, as Kenyans, you know, we all want to be treated with respect. Customer centricity. The thing of risk-based pricing, this is important because if you went to a bank, they should not just look at you and say, well, okay, you are 12% or you are 23%. It has to be based on the risk of the project. And I think this is the big thing that we have been pushing them towards. And they are getting there. They need to, it's like learning a new language. You don't start knowing it. You do it in, you know, kidogo kidogo. Transparency in terms of interest rates, what they're charging, and also ethical banking. So that is a journey that we have already, that took off in 2019, and we have already begun to see significant benefits from it. For instance, how do I know this? Well, you know it. During COVID, if you had a loan that was performing, you could go to your bank and renegotiate and get a new loan or reduce the terms, etc. You know, we've never, in the 56 years that we have been in MV Kenya has been sailing, that had never happened before. That a banker has you sort of say, okay, you're making your loans, but you know, we can, you know, tutasaidia kidogo, and then they changed it a little, etc., to benefit you. And I think this is something that we should appreciate. Would never have happened if the banks had not changed their outlook and felt that they have a responsibility to you as customers and to the country itself. I'm about to finish. The banking sector, growth in credit. I don't want to talk too much about this, but just to mention that actually it is now credit is available. It is true there are concerns. Some of you ask, well, they are lending to government, so they are crowding out private sector. That's not true. Yeah, they still have lending capacity, and they can lend you appropriately if you talk to them. Now, I want to finish, but really to mention just two things. Maybe not this one, but the next one, the slide of, no, that one, yeah. Because I'll send the slides to you, you look at it. So if I were to ask myself, what are the areas that we need your support in? Yeah, I think the first of this is we have a microfinance bill that we have, will be bringing to Parliament. Really this is meant to strengthen the microfinance sector. We have to move from the old-fashioned microfinance. We need to go to microfinance, in my view, I call it 3.0, as opposed to where we are now, which is microfinance 1.0. So we'll bring that bill, we'll explain it to you. I think it is important in terms of reaching to some of the unbanked, and particularly if you also have this digital sort of platforms, etc. The other one is a big one, which is the designation of lawyers. This is all regarding the anti-money laundering sort of issues. And I think this is where we have to appreciate that we as a country, and we are not going to say why, we can discuss it offline, but we as a country have been, let's say, we've not followed what everyone else, including our neighbors, Uganda, Tanzania, Mauritius, whatever, have done. And this is a standard thing that we should be doing, which is designating lawyers as reporting persons. And this is something that was discussed in Parliament, and I'm pretty sure it will come back to you. At this moment, there is a stay because somebody, I guess, petitioned about its appropriateness, etc., and so it's stuck in the courts, but we do need your support here. And more generally, strengthening the anti-money laundering combating or financing terrorism, the framework on that. And that is because we have just recently done the sort of a national assessment, national risk assessment, and also done what is known as a mutual evaluation of our implementation of our policies, which we would expect that you would support us in various ways. So, I'm about to finish. There has been some recent reviews of our economy. The things I said before obviously indicate some areas of that we need to work together, not just the people in this room, but I think also others, you know, the entire, all arms of government, let's put all arms and all elements in government. But I think recently there were 2 reviews, and I want to leave you with this, which is the review by the IMF that was concluded in July. This is just before the elections. And they concluded that there was a strong recovery underway and that we were implementing the right policies. Remember, it's ourselves that chose those policies. That is one of them. And then more recently, one of the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, affirmed Kenya's rating, foreign and local currency sovereign rating at B. And the outlook is stable. Now, this is against the backdrop of them, let's say, revising down other countries that you know of. I'm not going to name them, but so I think the point for me is are we sort of in the ditch completely, irretrievably? The answer is no. Is there work to do? A lot. Do we know what we want to do? I think we do. I think we need your support. I think we need support by every person. All the 50 million Kenyans we need to rally around specific things, and we talked about some specific areas that need our specific push. And at the end of it, you know, at the end of your term, in 5 years, we'll look back and see how far MV Kenya has sailed and how much the dashboard has changed in terms of the people. We talked about all those measures, but I think at the end of the day, in terms of the people. As I finish, I want to put out a simple example, which is, you see, it's not just about policies. You know, one of the things that we talk about is poor people need to get money, give them money, etc. But I want to give you an example of a project that was started by KCB, and they were working, this is like maybe 3 years ago, a bit more, 4 years ago, and they were working with the Makueni County, and it was about raising chicken. So they provided financing to raise chicken. The chicken was being raised by the smallholders, people who, Makueni, you understand, smallholder. By the way, I've told this to the former governor, Kibwana, and he was very excited about it when I told him about it, because I knew a lot about this. Anyway, the point was that they get the chicken, day-old chicken, they feed them, they are given feed, they are given the food to feed the chicken, they are given veterinary services, support services. I don't know how many weeks it takes. And then after those many weeks, somebody comes, buys them, or takes them away from them, and then slaughters them, of course, and they ended up in Carrefour. That's where they were being sold. The interesting thing is every farmer in this whole process, this chain that was there, was getting something like 11,300 Kenya shillings per month. And these are people who didn't have anything before. And that project, they started at 300 people, they ended up at 3,500. It had expanded to Kitui, to Kirinyaga, and I think Embu, those counties. The trouble is now it has fallen apart. We can discuss why it fell apart. But I think while it was running, you can imagine what 11,000 300, what that means to a family that doesn't have coffee, doesn't have anything else but that. And it was not finance. It was not finance by itself. It was finance plus, meaning they're supporting them. That, I think, is one of the things that, in my view, is a good demonstration of what you can do in your respective counties, in your respective jurisdictions, because you want to uplift the livelihood of the people that depend on you. Thank you very much. And I have Kipchoge there because I have a lot of respect for him. And actually on Sunday, he'll be trying to break the marathon record. Let's watch. Yeah. I can take questions, please.
Any questions to the governor?
Oh,
But
they're
before
plenty.
that, can we
Whoa.
give him a round of applause, please? For that candid talk. Many, many questions, Governor.
It's okay? Let's start then.
Let's have, I give you a number, so when one finishes, the other goes. Governor, how many can you take at a go before we go?
Let's take, why don't we begin with 4? Let's see.
4.
Yeah.
So can I have number 1 here? I'll give it to the lady from Nakuru. Number 2 here, the gentleman in the honorable member in the middle. You'll identify yourself as you ask. Number 3, I'll give to Kimani Ichung'wah. Number 4, I'll give to the hand at the back, somewhere in the middle. The honorable member. Okay, number 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start.
Okay, thank you.
We'll do all of you, so don't worry. Governor, looks like you will stand there for a little while.
But I'll also come back, so I hope it's not all questions for all time. Please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker and Dr. Njoroge. My name is Joseph Munyoro. I'm from Kigumo constituency. I have only 2 questions. I think there's an issue you've mentioned about the GDP. And you say you've mentioned it before about GDP growth, while on the street everybody is complaining. I think that's an area you need to explain in layman's terms so that people can be able to explain and understand where that comes from. I've also noticed from your presentation that China is the only country that's been able to bring their inflation from about 5.56% to 2.5%. And I'm wondering whether there is any lesson from that and whether we are implementing it in our case here in Kenya, because all other countries, the inflation is rising. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Honorable Liza Chelule from Nakuru County. You've spoken about some bills that need some consideration from the National Assembly for the purpose of assisting the unbanked and underbanked people at the community level. Which bills are these, and which are, can we have a list of microfinances at the community level? The reason why I'm asking this, Mr. Governor, is because of so many sufferings that women at the community level have been suffering because of the high interest of microfinances that they every time apply for. Thank you.
Number 3.
The last part, I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Lisa,
Honorable.
could you?
The last part, just the last part. Said women.
The reason why I'm asking this, Bana Governor, or Mr. Governor, CBK Governor, is because women who are the most busiest people at the community level doing all sorts of businesses, they have been taking loans from microfinances and they are charged high interest. So we, for the purpose of creating awareness at the community level, we want to know who are these microfinances. I know a few. We need to get the list. And what is the bill that you would want the National Assembly to consider?
Thank you. Thank you.
Number 3.
Thank you so much. I'm CPA Julius Ruto, Member of Parliament, Keses. I know, Governor, we had engagement last time if it was engaged. Now, basic question I'm asking. I've noted of late, there is no much supply of Kenyan denomination, the lowest notes. Does it mean, are we losing confidence on Kenyan denomination? Because banks now have very little supply of the lowest denomination. The other issue you never mentioned about in the aspect of subsidy, because now Kenyans have been taken up and down on the issue of subsidy on fuel. You've just shown us inflation on fuel, but we don't understand much about this. Thank you so much.
When you say supply, what?
The Kenyan denomination.
Kenyan denomination.
It's out of stock.
I understand.
In the banks. Thank you.
Okay.
Number 4.
Thank you, Governor. You've spoken about the anti-money laundering work that you have done at CBK. And you know you have had a long-standing debate with the National Assembly.
Yes, sir.
On the question of the national payment system, instances where I can't do even a check of above 1 million shillings. I have to do 999,000. And also the issues of that, in a big way we feel you've been stifling trade by limiting the amount of money that one can either withdraw or deposit in their bank accounts. I would want to hear what CBK is doing. And most disturbing is the fact that CBK has allowed a very unfair and unequal system in the banking sector where I can walk into certain banks today, withdraw whatever amount of money I want, whereas in others, I have to get a letter even from my grandmother and anybody else I could get from to explain why I'm withdrawing the money or where I'm taking it, or even deposit. Yet in some banks, you can do that. Maybe you need to do something at CBK to create a fair playing field. If rules are there for up to 1 million shillings or up to 999,000, it should be across the board for all in the banking sector. 2 is the digital space. And I know you have had efforts to regulate the digital lenders, but I would really have wanted to hear what you have done more so to deal with the predatory lenders in the digital space, because this, again, is something that has really punished many of our small-scale traders that are borrowing at rates that even governments cannot be able to borrow at, either from the domestic or the international markets. And I've seen you from some of the interventions you expect to get assistance from the National Assembly or from Parliament is a bill on microfinance. I don't know whether that encompasses also the digital lenders or it's microfinance banks, or does it also cover regulation of the digital money lenders? Lastly, over the last 2-3 months, there has been a debate in the media on whether there is or there are adequate foreign exchange reserves in the country, and whether CBK has been rationing the amount of dollars or foreign currencies that people can use. And I've heard you in the media say that there are enough dollars in the market, but those dollars are also not available to traders in the banks. Is it that banks are holding dollars and CBK is unable to regulate banks to make sure that they don't hold dollars, or what really is a problem? Or would you be kind enough to tell us, Kinaga Ubaga, do we have enough dollars in the market?
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Those are the 4.
Governor, those are the first
Thank
4.
you. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the questions. Maybe begin from Honorable Kinyoro's. I hope I got your name right. Munyoro, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. So yes, the question you had is, yes, GDP numbers, but people are complaining. So there is this issue which I kind of alluded to, which is you cannot eat GDP. That is my rough way of answering it. So even we as economists, even as we kind of get excited about growth rates and charts and all that, at the end of the day, it is what do I take home? So there are two problems here. First, GDP is the income for all of us. All of us, the entire country. You know, we could say that this section are getting a lot of the share, the bigger share of the cake. And these other ones are not getting much. That is the first problem. Actually, COVID around the world has increased the inequities that we have seen in economies. So we are not talking just Kenya. I'm not talking of the COVID billionaires and millionaires, but I hope you can protect me, right? In all this, whatever I say here remains with us.
You are protected, Governor. Sema ukweli yote.
Thank you. So there are people that became very rich during COVID. But where were the others? Where were the others? There are people who lost their businesses, they got closed, etc. That's what you hear. So inequities, or should we say inequalities, have become larger, not less. And that is an important thing. When you think about inequities or inequalities, you also think about inequalities about opportunities. So for instance, when they say when I complain or you complain or somebody comes to you and complains, you know, they had a bill, as I said, of somebody. One of the most, I'm like you, yeah? You are an important member of our community. When all this was going on, how many people came to you asking for money to bury somebody? It wasn't one, I'm sure. And this is not the harambe that we always do. You know those harambes, right? No, it is because people needed, they were a serious need. And then you give your pickup, you do this, you do all those other things, because people are in serious need. A lot of you also did things like provide food, yeah? We talked about Kipchoge. He actually provided a whole bunch of the runners, because they were not getting any money and they had run out of money. He gave them something to sustain on. So that is what you hear. And I think it is important to appreciate that they are not wrong when they complain. It's only that maybe we get too focused on that bottom line and not realize that actually that number can hide a lot of other things that we need to deal with. So that's my rough answer, and I think you can see where we're going with that. You talked about China inflation. China, the problem is not inflation. The problem is growth in China. They used to grow at 10%. Yeah? I remember when, a few years ago, when we were working in a different life, 7% was sort of like their bottom line, sort of like minimum. Yeah? That's the floor. 7%. Where are they now? This year they'll be less than 5%. I mean, if that is not an earthquake, I don't know what is. And this is all done by COVID. So inflation is not a problem there. But since the entire economy came to a crashing halt, their growth rate is the one that is now a big problem. And I don't know, they did have a big meeting recently, I think 2 days ago. I don't know what came out of it, but I'm curious to find out what they said about growth. But at the same time, China growth, they have a big issue, which is a bubble in the building industry. So they have been building all this, so the buildings, and mainly residential buildings, and they've just been growing like mushrooms everywhere, and banks were financing it. Now that whole growth model has come to a halt, and they have to deal with the weak banks that actually now cannot, that are sort of on the ropes because of this sort of bubble, which will soon burst if they're not careful. So there are problems in China as well. And I think we have to learn, and I take your point, let's learn from everybody and avoid those mistakes that maybe would be very expensive. So thank you for your points. Now, Mheshimiwa from Nakuru, I didn't get your name, but it's okay. You know, you make this point about women at, you know, the issues that you face, and I'm sure you have very detailed examples on this, high interest, etc. I think we are dealing with it in two ways. First is to make sure that the institutions that are lending according to risk, right? So, for instance, the women that go to, you know, let's say a lady who has a certain business, and she's been doing that business. You could even think of hair salon or whatever, and she's very good at it, etc. Why shouldn't she get additional financing so that she can expand it a little? Yeah. So it is because she's been there for a while. She is good risk, and that the bank has to accept. That as, you know, her history as such. The biggest problem, to be honest, about why women don't get as much credit and etc., or maybe at times get very high interest, is often because banks end up asking for security. Yeah? I have many examples about this. They ask for titles, and you know that is a problem. I don't need to say any more. Yeah? In our society today, you know, not many women have titles. It is, you know, Niabwana, title Niabwana, you know. So we have issues there. So I think the point here is why we are so pushy, or we are pushing this thing of improving the, let's say, the banking, the banking sector, the way they lend with, and we have indicated through our banking sector culture, charter, so that these issues can be dealt with. So it isn't, the most important issue isn't the institution as such. It is the things that hold the women back from being brought into the financial space in a full way. One of the things we'll be doing, and we have been working towards this, is also so that we can have, let's say, portable credit or credit rating, right? So today and now, actually we've done this. In CRBs, at times they end up treating you in a negative way. By the way, we've made progress. I'm not going to say too much about this, but we've made a lot of progress, more than, say, has been acknowledged, but that's okay. I think we want to have these conversations. But we want to get to a point where actually a good borrower, meaning one that repays, can actually benefit from that and have a lower interest rate for future lending. So it's not just about women as such, yeah? It is really about some of the things that hold them back, and that's what we are trying to fix. I would want to have conversations with you in the future, and I'm willing to even have conversations with some of your groups to suggest ways and how to deal with this. I'm willing to also talk to some of the banks. Some of the banks actually have been doing some specific programs for women. And actually, to be honest, those programs are doing very well. So we could have some offline conversations at the right time. There was a question about, by the way, also it's an issue of information. We need to put out information, and I do acknowledge that we need to do better in this. Then there are two questions about the Kenyan denomination, and the first thing, of course, is to apologize to our chair, the speaker, because he asked a question right at the beginning and I forgot. I'm sorry about that. The quality of the currency, and then also the availability of Kenyan denomination currency. I think the first on the availability, I want to be very explicit about this. We have more than enough pieces of paper, currency, for the country. More than enough in all denominations. So it's the banks that need to request. What happens, frankly, is at times a particular bank, right, in, let's say, mind you, we are not talking, let's say, ABSA. It's not ABSA in general. You're talking ABSA Kisii, or you're talking, whatever, a particular branch, this road in Thika, that branch, they may not be good enough in terms of making their requests. It's just like any supermarket. You may go there and you find they don't have bread, but there's bread available elsewhere. But for some reason, when they ordered, they didn't order enough. And so there's a bit of, let's say, planning problem with some of the banks. And this we've seen, particularly as you were doing your elections, right? There was a lot more demand of some of those currencies, and therefore, at times, they got it wrong. But I want to assure you that that is not a problem that should be with you, because it's really, and it's going to be resolved as things, as a matter of fact, at this moment, we are seeing a lot more currency coming into the central bank as opposed to going out. So I think the point I'm making here is that we will this balance will be resolved quite quickly. The question about quality of currency, Bwana Speaker, this was a concern a little earlier. Today and now, if you go out there, I am willing to take a bet that you won't see dirty currency, or there'll be very little dirty currency. And the point is that we listened to you, and we did our work with the banks quietly, making sure that whatever is there is clean and of high quality. So I think the point I'm making is at the beginning there were concerns, and for several reasons, one of which is the way people are treating it, but I think also the way the currency had sort of been put out, etc. But today and now, that problem has kind of subsided, and I haven't seen it. And again, as I say, we are seeing the currency that's coming back, you understand, from all over, after your campaigns. We are seeing it coming back. So we know what we are talking about. Then what else? The issue about credit and subsidies, etc., I don't know who answered the question. These are things that we need to discuss a lot more. Why? Because it's not a one-sided thing. It's true, as the president said, and again, as you asserted, any subsidy is a cost. It's a subsidy, but at the same time, it's a cost in the sense that somebody needs to be taxed somewhere to cover that subsidy. So that balance is one that needs to be struck. And I think also there's another side of it, which is when the subsidy is removed, prices will rise, as happened with the super petrol, and therefore that will be reflected in inflation. And there will be knock-on effects. Matatus will increase their prices. I'm told that now they've increased on the Thika Road and other places, Narok, I don't know. The point I'm making is there are other considerations, and that's why it is important to have a complete 360-degree view about subsidies, etc. But the bottom line is subsidies are generally temporary. They work if it is temporary, but with time, they end up creating serious distortions in the markets, and that's why it is important to deal with them. A few questions by our Mheshimiwa Ichung'wah. We've had a lot of conversations, even remember in Bali, that famous room. We've come a long way, haven't we? I think this is something, your questions are valid, okay? I think the point here is that the conversation about the 1 million, you call it the 1 million limit. We don't think of it as a limit, but anyway, that whole thing. As I explained recently, this is something that we as central bank are working on. Why? To improve it. It's not working the way it should, because it's being used in some sense to punish you. Yeah, in a sort of, and you talked about even-handed or even playing field. I don't know, I wrote here even playing field. I don't know whether that's the word you had. And even that, there's a problem with it. It should be straightforward. It should be straightforward in the sense that, you know, my favorite example is the petrol station attendant. Yeah, so I own a petrol station, and I get, I don't know, 2 million every 2-3 days. I deposit it. When I go to the bank, they know that I own that petrol station. So why is it that they keep asking me, where did I get the money? Where did I get the money? You know, and even the banker filled his car at my petrol station. So in some sense, there has to be, let's say, some sanity in the way they deal with the customer. The KYC, know your customer, needs to be properly KYC. That they know you, they know that I run that petrol station, and every so often I bring in 2 million, etc. And so those sort of issues need to be dealt with. The other things, which is, I'll mention it and then move on, but the one that really bothers me as well is, and again, this is an example, you go to a bank, the bank has a policy. Let's say ABSA, right? It has a policy. And you go to ABSA Queensway or ABSA Westlands, and let's say you are depositing money there. And yeah, 1 million, they have no problem with it, right? Then let's say somebody else is depositing 1 million in ABSA Kitui or Kajiado. You know, the manager can say, hey, 1 million, he is Taguza, where? And Anazo. You understand? So the manager is becoming a petite whatever, right? He's changing the rules by himself. And that gentleman that depositor has no recourse, in a sense. So we are trying to put some sanity there, but I think we need to do it correctly, because we don't want to undo some of the things that have helped us, yeah? But we do understand it's an issue of customer pain points. That's the word I use, pain points that we need to deal with, understand them and deal with them. And we've done some work already. We do hope to see the benefits of those going forward. The last point you had was about adequate foreign exchange. I want to again assure you that yes, we do have adequate foreign exchange. What was happening is in the 2-3 months, you had people that were, again, trying to bring us back to Golden Bug. I want to say that again. People that wanted to bring us back to Golden Bug. And if you remember what was happening in Golden Bug, this is what some of the people are pushing towards. I don't want to get into the details because, you know, they will ask me, where's the proof? Yeah, and I'll say, well, I don't have proof, you know, I'm not DCI. So, but I think the point I'm making is the hype, the pressures had nothing to do with what was happening in the markets. And what was happening is, okay, you do have some rogue traders in particular banks, and they are working to do their thing, right? And so we went after those, and we've dealt with some of them. Now, you cannot kill every single mosquito in the room, but I think the point is you have to deal with it, yeah? And I think that's the sanity. But I think also part of that was obviously, you know, we were in a particular kipindi, you know, politics, etc. So everything was politics. But now that we are on the other side, I think there'll be better appreciation. And I can already assure you that sanity has returned. I mean, even right actually from the beginning of, you know, from the announcement and indeed even the recent decision by the Supreme Court, you can actually just see the numbers and you can see, you know, the thing is coming down to where it should be, yeah? What it should be. Obviously, it won't happen in a day, but we are getting there. And thank you for your support.
Good. Can we do another round of 4? Yes. I'll start from here again.
Chair.
Yes.
One thing I forgot. He asked, Honorable Ichungu asked about the digital.
Yes.
I want to tell you that, yes, this has been a long journey that we started quite some time ago, and we owe a lot of a tribute, or let's say, to Honorable Oyo. Remember him? Who passed away. I forget his name, first name, but you know him from Kisii. Yeah. because he's the one who pushed us quite hard, or worked with you and ourselves. And this was one of the bills that was brought to Parliament, etc. And in the end, the chair, then it was Honorable Wag, pushed it over the finish line, etc. So we've done what we should have done this year. And yesterday, on the 17th of September, that was Saturday, we actually began, we finished that process of the first batch of, let's say, approving, licensing the digital credit providers. And today we issued a press release, which you can see on your phone, indicating that we have now started this. To be honest, there were 288 of these people that came to us, 288. Just imagine the mess that those people are creating. We approved 10. You ask why? What happened to all the others? Partly because the others were playing Maneno, right? You ask them questions, they don't answer. Yeah? So we do understand. It's now they're on the other side. You understand what I'm saying? So now they have to play according to the rules. We are not just going to rush them through just because they have a big name or any of these things. Yeah? And that is exactly what you wanted. You wanted us to restore sanity. And I want to thank you for supporting, well, I think the country more than anything else. It's not the central bank. We are KYMs, so we do the work as agreed. But I think I feel better that this thing now has started. That train now has begun to do what it should do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here.
Another round. Let me take the honorable member at the back. Kiari, I'll come to you. I'll come here, take Mama Nairobi. There's a gentleman who had actually stood up, the honorable member, in a dark suit. I'm sorry, I can't see that far.
Waluke is here.
Okay, and the last will give the honorable member lady on the front. Where is Waluke?
I'm here, Your Speaker. This side.
Okay, you'll be number 5.
Okay, thanks.
So let's start with number 1.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Number
Bwana
1
Speaker.
from here,
Yes.
come to Mama Nairobi, go to the gentleman. Is it Okukaunya? Yes, sorry, I had not noticed. And then the lady on the front, the honorable member, and Honorable Waluke, who are solicited to be noticed. Yes, Governor.
Thank you, Bwana Governor.
Can
Thank
listen
you,
to
Bwana
them.
Speaker. I am Kirima Moses.
And because of the interest, please try and just ask one question each,
I will squeeze my 3
so
questions
that we
into one.
give room to everybody else.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bwana Honorable Speaker. I will squeeze my 3 questions into one. I'm Moses Kirima from Central Imenti, Meru District in Meru County. Now, Bwana Governor, my simple question, of which I would like to squeeze the 3 to be one, is that since you took over as a central banking governor, of which it happened at the time when I have been working as an advocate, you came up with some policies which are not so much business friendly. And one of them, even though it has been asked, I would wish to just to retaliate the same so that you can give us a concrete answer, whereby this idea of 1 million, our people have been business people for quite a period, and they have been operating with large amount of money. Now, is it not discouraging our people from saving because they know that they will not be able to withdraw the same to carry out their businesses, and they are keeping the money in their houses? Because that's where they can be able to access it without hindrance. That's one. Then the other one is this one of whereby this policy of anti-bank laundering money. This one, it came to Parliament as a bill, And we are so much aware there is some countries which are called safe havens, whereby they have been made rich by having savings from outside countries. And ours is that now we have squeezed those savers from outside, and we cannot allow people to save from outside in Kenya, because there is that policy, especially of advocates' client confidentiality. Is it not that we are discouraging those savers from outside, yet in European countries, you can get there and save a lot of money as much as you wish? Is it not a policy from outside which is against us? Then to conclude, we have the academic idea of economic development in Kenya, where GDP is looking so good. But Bwana Governor, if you happen to go to the rural areas, you'll find that people have no money. Money is not circulating in the people's pockets. People have no money. And to becoming more academic than really when it comes to money circulating in the rural areas. That's all, Bwana Governor. That's all.
Next, Mheshimiwa Passaris, please restrict to one question or one comment in your interventions, because the interest is very vast.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yesterday, His Excellency, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, was on an interview, and he said that we had a big crisis on pending bills amounting to over 500 billion, and he was going to ask for Central Bank to approve floating a bond for 500 billion to pay the pending bills. Now, for me, much as I know that a lot of people are owed money, the question that I have in my head is that we put a law in procurement that no government entity can procure without having a budget, allocating the budget, forming a tender committee. So for me, if we actually look at 500 billion in pending bills, then my question is, this money was approved, this money was allocated, that's why the expenditure happened, and then it wasn't paid to the relevant people. So where is this initial 500 billion that should have paid these pending bills? And would you support a 500 billion pending bills bond for the government and the impact it will have on us as a country?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Kaunya.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Governor, thank you for the very elaborate presentation. But my question is on this digital currency as in relation to the devaluation of the shilling versus the dollar. You did indicate the dollar, which you didn't want to come out very clearly, the political aspect. To what extent would the bitcoins or digital currencies help us to resolve that devaluation that really is affecting the cost of living, devaluation of the shilling against the dollar from time to time? And what is the status of our adoption of the digital currencies? Thank you.
The Honorable
Thank you, Mr.
Distinguished
Speaker.
Lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bwana Governor, my name is Rosa Buyu from Kisumu West. Bwana Governor, a lot of Kenyans are apprehensive and actually highly fearful that there's going to be a shutdown by government. Why? Because many of our respected leaders have actually pronounced that government accounts only has 93 million. I'd just like to have a clarification from you on behalf of those Kenyans. Is this just hot air or it's fact? Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Waluke, the fifth.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. My question to Governor is that before I ask the question, you are not coming out clearly answering the questions. I want you to tell us about the economy of this country, whether it's doing well, improving, or tickling down. Two, I want you to talk about the debt ceiling also. How much we borrowed as a country and how much have we paid as today. I think those are enough.
Thank you, Governor. Now we go. Governor, we have taken 5.
Okay, fine.
You can
so
now
let
answer.
me take this. I thought there was somebody else, but that's okay. So beginning with the first one, and if you don't mind, I'll try and move a little faster.
Yes.
The member from Meru. So business and friendly policies, and in particular, the question that was also asked by Honorable Ichung'wah. I think the point here is we cannot, we cannot continue doing things the old way. Yeah, the cash, etc. The world is moving ahead. And one of the big issues, years ago, we never had this problem. Now we have a problem of money laundering, illicit transactions, etc. Those are big things. Years ago, remember years ago, you could even be smoking now where you are. Yeah? But you don't. Even outside, they'll probably arrest you if you go out there and begin smoking. Now, smoking is a small, let's say, violation. Actually, money laundering is a bigger violation. And money laundering comes with other issues. As they say, these things, it's like problems. Problems don't come singly. They come in multiple at once. So if you begin with money laundering, if you allow money laundering, etc., you can imagine that all the other vices will come with it. And I don't mean vices in a moral way. I mean it in the way that we as a society know it, we as a Kenyan society, right? Like now we are talking about these girls that are going to Saudi Arabia and coming back in difficulties, whatever that means. I mean, if that's not a problem that we are willing to sort of make ours and solve, then we have a problem. So I'm just making the point here that the reason to do these things, the bottom line here is to make the environment safer for all of us. Now, it may require that, when you go, in the past you'd put in your money in the bank and there were no questions. Now they need to know what your line of business is. I keep telling you, wait till you become a PEP. I think Speaker, you are PEP. You are like me. PEP is politically exposed persons. Most of you are politically exposed, but for the banks, somehow they don't always take you as such. But if you're politically exposed, and I also see another politically exposed person there, Ambassador, and the point is that just because of that, you are required to, when you go out of the country, you open an account or whatever, or you're making your family is making a transaction, they have to go through many hoops just to show that you are not, let's say, involved in some sort of illicit transaction. So I think the point here is we need to understand that and also make it friendly for you. And that I accept. Meaning we need to improve the system, as I explained in the answer, so that it is not a sort of a punishment. It's not something that is, let's say, that the banks are using to punish you and you have to go through all these hoops, particularly because they know you. The banker should know you. I mean, there are 3 people that generally we used to say people need to know. One is your banker, second is your priest, yeah? And the third is your doctor, I hope, yeah? Not your lawyer, but your doctor. So those are people that you should be sort of working with closely, and they know you quite well. So I hope that makes, now in terms of businesses coming into Kenya, we want good businesses to come that are founded on good business practices, etc. What we don't want is businesses that are supported by sort of illicit financial flows. Those we don't need. It's better if we die poor than get involved in those things. And I think there are many things that we should respect. We have a lot of self-respect and sort of say, well, we can do better than that. We don't need to sort of link up with people that are involved in this business in order to move forward. In terms of the other issue of you talked about the economic growth being academic, etc. I do accept that, but I thought I explained the point that what you are seeing is this sort of dichotomy of, let's say, the inequality that applies at times. I gave that example of, some of us may be doing very well, while others, our people may not be doing so well. There are some sectors that have gone under, right? You can imagine, for instance, there was a whole discussion about coffee. You talk to a coffee farmer, and you'll know how they feel, yeah? Because there was a time that coffee was king, but now they feel that it's not, or even some of the tea farmers. So now, those are just examples that maybe that closer to me in terms of top of mind. But I'm sure there are many other examples of maybe sectors and people are doing certain things and now they cannot do it, and so you see that hardship, and that's why they say hakuna pesa mashinani, because of those sort of considerations. But I think that's where we come in. That's a challenge we have. I think we should not shrink from the challenge. We should, if anything, face it and resolve it for the benefit of our population. Honorable from Nairobi, thank you for your question. Pending bills, as I said, pending bills, going back to MV Kenya, is a big problem. But, we have to deal with it holistically. There's no point in paying all the pending bills, and then we end up creating more. So first thing is to stop creating new pending bills. And then you also know that pending bills in the past, I was in Treasury back in 85. Yeah, young economist then. And there was that problem of pending bills. And I remember, we even had some money that was supposed to go into pending bills. We had people like Halaki, I think that was the name of the FS at the time. Yeah. But the point I'm making is that why hasn't it worked? Because at times the money that is put out for pending bills goes to do other things. Yeah, so we are too good for our own good. I think you get my point. And so the pending bills becomes this balloon of our excesses. Now, we can blame Treasury, but actually they are not the only ones to blame. Counties and also the ministries are part of the problem. Actually, one of the issues that we need to resolve is when they get allocation to pay, 100 million particular projects or particular, some of those funds at times are being diverted to other things. So that's where the issues are. But I think this has to be done correctly. I don't think the issue is just saying, okay, it's X amount, let's create a bond and resolve it. Because you don't have a contract as such with those pending bill people, yeah? And what you may start as 500 or X may end up being 2X. And that is why actually in the last 2 years or so, there has been a project that was trying to deal with the pending bills, and the controller of budget had to go through them and sign off on them and assure the world that these are true pending bills and now they created. The trouble is she began to run into things and say, wait a second, I paid for that. What happened here? And the thing, obviously the money was diverted some other place. So I think the point here is we have to deal with the pending bills holistically. Whether 500 billion as a bond, all I'll say is last year, our domestic financing was 690 billion. 690, that's what the central bank was required to raise in domestic borrowing for the budget in the financial year. How does that compare to 500? Actually, we didn't even manage 680. We ended up at 600. So I think the point is, I would want us to have a conversation, so that we can put our 2 cents in the mix and sort of get a solution to this big problem. But I think it has to be resolved. Remember, it was the anchor that I talked about is one of those things. But I think it has to be done, all of us, together. And I hope that answers your question. Then other questions, maybe I should take Mheshimiwa from Kisumu, Kebue. You asked about the 93 million and whether it's hot air and things like that. I think the point to make, you're probably alluding to what is known as the cash flow of the government that I know was circulating over social media this weekend. And that cash flow, the government is required to publish it every single month, okay? So we see it every month. The point is that it shows the inflows, so it's a bit like, you are in a, how much came in, how much did you spend, and how much remained. So if you look, there are certain revenues. If you see, there are certain expenditures. And then you have the bottom line, which is what is the balance, which is that number. The fact that it is 93, in my view, is neither here nor there. Why? Because there may have been expenditures that were needed that maybe were held back in terms of pending bills or any of these other things. You understand? So this line or this table taken by itself doesn't give you a complete picture. But I think it tells you that the government had certain expenditures, it got certain flows, including loans, and it paid those expenditures, and the balance was X, or whatever the number is, the 93. Now, I'm sorry. What? It's not there? Oh, hot air. I thought that we have suddenly switched to CJ Martha Kome's language. I'm not going to go there. But I think the point I'm making is that, thank you, but I think the point I'm making here is that I think the more fundamental issue is the charts I gave you, the deficit, because that tells you that we are actually spending more, living beyond our means. And you can live beyond your means for a period of time, just like you borrow for the car, or borrow for a house. So you're spending beyond your means for a period of time, but you know you're going to repay it. So it has to be, so the three of them have to be seen together. And, but I do wish you to ask that question to the PS Treasury. I'm sure he's an accountant. He'll give you a better answer to the question than I did, but that's the way I look at it, okay? But then on other questions, the Bitcoin and digital currency versus, it doesn't matter about, it doesn't relate to depreciation, meaning the two are not related. The Bitcoin, basically there are two things. It started off and they began telling us that this is going to be the next best thing in terms of payments platform. It's very difficult to do more than 7 transactions an hour on Bitcoin, just because of the way it is. So it's no longer that. What it is now, it is sort of an investment, a sort of, so you buy it and then it's an investment vehicle. So I don't think the issue is Bitcoin as such, but maybe more generally you're asking about digital currencies. The way we see digital currencies is the most important question we have is what problem are they resolving? So in our economy, what problem are they resolving? Are they better vehicles for, let's say, payments, transactions? And the answer is no. Are they better in terms of whatever the problems it is, security? more than, let's say, your bank account or any of these things? And the answer is no. So we see it as sort of something that maybe is being hyped, but we do need to look at it carefully and figure out whether it will resolve a particular problem or not. Now, I do know you're under a lot of pressure from some of these people that are, let's say, the people that are pushing these things, because for them it is good. I can assure you I have a lot of people that have been pushing me to put our reserves in Bitcoin. You know, can you imagine that? If I did that, please take me to committee and throw away the key. Because I would have been out of my mind. That sort of craziness, I think you understand. And maybe you can do it with your own money and play around with it, yeah? But even your own money, I'm sure your family will not let you do it, because it's a crazy sort of, very volatile, you know? So I hope we understand each other on this. Last point, I don't remember his name, but he was emphatic that I'm not speaking clearly. I didn't know I wasn't speaking clearly. Is the economy doing well? My answer is there are certain aspects of it that are going very well, yeah, taken globally. And we talked about some of the sectors. Yeah, I didn't really talk about all of them, but there's some sectors that are doing well. Post-COVID, you know, have been hit hard, quite hard. You know, the economy took, you know, two huge blows, COVID and then the Ukraine, yeah? All this Ukraine, and I mean, I'm talking of the price surge, etc. Relative to other countries, we've done very well. I just came back from Mauritius, where I met with, thank you, where we met with 20 other governors of Africa. And basically, where we were hanging out, they asked, hey, so Kenya, you're doing pretty well, aren't you? And I think it is true. But on the other hand, we cannot be satisfied with that. But also, at a macro level, we are doing well. We still have reserves. We still have credit is growing, etc. We've recovered from some of those things. The price of oil has more than, I mean, it was $30 back in, $30 a barrel back in March of 2020. And now it is at 3 times that. I mean, just think of that. And still we are running, and I think we are still on our feet. I think we should be proud of that. Now, having said that, there are still some problems in the system, right? And a lot of them are the ones that were being mentioned a moment ago. There are some sectors or some of our population are not getting the benefits coming to them. And we talked about that. So that is, I think, the issue. Of course, there are the bigger things that government has been unable to deal with some of the things that we generally accept are government services, health, education, or is struggling to deal with those. I mean, when you go on a road and it's potholes all over, I mean, you say, surely, or, you know, in your own constituency, they're even planting bananas on the road because they're so upset, you know, with the state of the roads, etc. I think the point I'm making here is there's other things that need to be dealt with. And so we cannot minimize this and say we are okay, growth is X%, we are happy, mambo ni sawa. No, I think we have a lot of work. And frankly, that's why we come to work every day. That's why we come to work every day. If it is not because of that challenge, then we wouldn't go to work. And there are 50 million Kenyans that are looking to us, hoping that we can provide them with opportunities. I want to finish with one last thing, Chair, yes, which is youth. We haven't said anything about youth, but what do youth want? They don't want a handout. Of course, they're going to reach for the handout if you give it to them. Yeah? But that's not what they should get. They should get opportunities. Provide them with opportunities. Figure out how to create those opportunities. I gave you the example of the chicken farmers, right? I think you can think of other ways. They don't necessarily, those opportunities may not be in an office, you know, behind a desk or things like that. But I think there's a lot that they need. Opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. That is, to me, the rallying call for what we should do with the youth. But anyway, it's in your hands.
Thank you, Governor. Honorable members, I want to terminate the engagement with the governor now.
Thank you.
Because listening, 1 minute, Honorable Carrier, listening to our interventions, I think the streak is the same. And we've got the point. Allow me to call our next president. Okay, Carrier, you'll be the very last.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My hand had been up from the very first round, and I'm glad I caught your eye. Governor, this question is straight to the point. We have companies that are registered as communication companies that are doubling up as banks. As it is right now, they fall and are regulated under the Communications Authority. But because they're also transacting money, there are some regulations that come from central bank that they depend on. My question is, from where you sit as central bank, how can this parliament help you with legislation? And would that legislation mean that we break these telecommunication companies into different operating units where the communication sits on its own and they are regulated by Communications Authority, and they have a unit that is transacting in money that will be regulated specifically from central bank? Is this a law that is required from Parliament, or is it central bank regulations that will separate these operations of the telcos? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. So I think here, before I answer your question, this is where you see if all the arms of government are working together, we can go very far. Legislation, the judiciary, the executive, I don't know where we are. We are an agency of the executive, of course, in this thing. Because the law actually is there. And I would want you to ask me that question in January. Because actually, we want to be sure that those sort of issues are dealt with. We have to understand where we came from. Meaning, when we started off, we didn't know what we were dealing with. Remember, we were like the first car down the road, so nobody knows how this thing. But we've done a lot to regulate all these payment service providers. Today, for instance, you can go and check on our website, and you'll see the names of all the payment service providers. We were not doing that before. You can see who it is, etc. Anyway, the point I'm making is that is one important thing to secure the operations, let's say, on the money side. So I think we are on our way in this path. We also know the history, meaning you are very concerned. I'm talking of the 12th Parliament. They are very concerned about some of those things. But I think we are now, let's say, much further ahead in this thing. So if you would just be patient, ask the question. Next time I see you, ask me that question, hopefully before the end of the year, but definitely by January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. Can we put our hands together for the Governor, please?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this engagement, and I look forward to meeting you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Honorable members, our next speaker is the Principal Secretary for Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Macharia Kamau. He's going to speak to us on diplomacy, international relations, and the role of a legislator in the diplomatic arena. Ambassador Macharia's bio is available in the booklet. You can read through. He's a consummate diplomat, having represented Kenya in, among other places, the UN as the permanent rep for quite a number of years. Ambassador Macharia, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Maybe I ask all of you to stand up just for 1 second, just to allow your blood to move a little bit, so that kidogo mnyoroshe mwili. Ndio. Bari, mheshimiwa. Asanteni sana. Yes, let us take our seats, please. Thank you very much. Let me also begin by recognizing the speaker. If somebody is the Donyon or the old bull of foreign affairs in Kenya, it is the Speaker of the National Assembly who for many, many years was our guide when he was the foreign minister. So it's good to be in your presence again, and congratulations on your elevation to the Speaker. Let me also congratulate all of you for the amazing campaigns that you carried out and for being here in your rightful role as members of Parliament who are leading our country forward. The gentleman who just left, the governor, is a man I admire greatly. I had hoped he would stay so I could flatter him for 1 second. I'm always amazed as a guy who travels the world, that the Kenya shilling remains a competitive currency in an African country that has no oil, has no gas, has no gold. We have no natural resources to speak of. All we have is people and agriculture and other similar kind of service capabilities. And if you saw his chart a little earlier, you've seen that the Kenya shilling remains one of the most stable currencies, not just in Africa, but in the world. I'm sorry he wasn't here, because I think Central Bank deserves a very, very strong round of applause. Anyway, this is important because your ability to, the value that your house has, the value that your shamba has, the value that anything that you own has, is driven by the value of the Kenya shilling. And it's an amazing thing that the shilling is such a powerful currency, despite our circumstances. But today I'm not here to speak as an economist, I'm here to speak as a diplomat. Let me begin by introducing some of my colleagues who are here. Ambassador Josephat Maikara, who is our SFSA, Ambassador McKenna, who is at UNEP, Ambassador Jean Kemani, who is at UN Habitat, Ambassador Matwanga, who is our economist for our economic department, Ambassador Susan Mwangi, who is our UN, Ambassador Waweru, who deals with treaties, Ambassador Andambi, who is, are you in Middle East now? Asia, Ambassador Lucy, who is now in Europe, Ambassador Musili, who is now in Americas, Ambassador Catherine, who is now East African Community, Ambassador Vungo, who is our lawyer, legal department. Who is that? Ambassador, Chief of Africa, yes. Thank you. And Ambassador, is that it? Yeah, okay. All right, I can't see very well from here, but I also see my colleague Kevin Thuo and my other colleagues from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you all very much for being here to support me. Mabalozi. Yeah, but he's not my ambassador right now. So let me talk about foreign affairs for a minute, and let me start by telling you just how crucially important foreign affairs is for this country. If you want to know what makes countries powerful and what makes these countries successful, it is the ability to control assets in the world, not in their own country. If you want to know why a small little country like Britain was an imperial power, it was because of its ability to project its foreign policy, its foreign power around the world, and bring its wealth back home, which made Britain one of the most richest countries in the world. For us, foreign policy presents the choices and actions that we must take to promote our own national interests. We must push a combination of principles and norms which guide and steer and determine the interaction of our country with that of other countries. And really, the key to foreign policy is how we make sure that our national interests, mahitaji yetu, are the issues that are taken to be serious around the world. Whether we're talking about our products, whether we are talking about our exports, whether we are talking about our imports, our everything, that is driven by the conduct of foreign policy. It also means that for us to succeed, we must have a very well orchestrated and coordination of our foreign policy with our economic policy, with our political policy, with our agricultural policy, with our trade policy, and all these other policies, because we are only as effective in foreign policy as we are with all the other policies, including our financial policy that we were speaking to a few minutes earlier. But we all know that we live in a world, we are not living in isolation. Therefore, we have rules that we have to adhere to. And this is where sometimes we need the help of legislators. It so happens that everything that we are subject to, all the treaties that determine our ability to do business in the world, must be approved by you, the legislators. And this I'll come back to later. But we are driven and we are managed by the Vienna Convention on the Diplomatic Relations in the World. So it is not possible for us to do whatever we wish. We have to work within a certain set of rules, and those rules determine how we engage in the world. Now, because we live in a globalized world, we have to understand that everything we do is interdependent. What happens in Tanzania, in Somalia, what happens in Ethiopia, in DRC, but even what happens in China and in other countries further afield affect our ability to engage in foreign policy. But the one thing that we must never forget is that every nation is trying to push and to protect their national interest. That is what you must never forget. And you, as members of parliament, are the protectors of the national interest of our country, and it is through you that we advance our national interest through our foreign policy. In the case of the foreign affairs, we engage on multiple levels. So, for example, we have what we call multilateralism, multi meaning many, lateralism, relationships. The UN is a multilateral organization, and we have to act within the United Nations. Many of our policies, many of our programs, whether they're on climate change, environment, health, education, are organized within the United Nations system. And it is for us to engage the United Nations system to make sure that our national interest is protected through the United Nations system. Now, that engagement is what we call multilateralism. It's a very powerful tool for us. And sometimes when you become a superpower, you can act unilaterally because you're strong. So sometimes the United States of America, for example, does things themselves without caring what the rest of the world does. However, they always run into a problem because the United States is also not an island. At some point, they have to come to us to negotiate, to trade with us, and to share their activities and their programs with us. So at the end of the day, we all have to be multilateralists, all of us. And so sometimes when we're dealing with parliamentarians or with congressmen in the United States or with parliamentarians in Europe, they will say, we want what is for our country's interest. And they don't particularly care what the other countries in the world think about. That is all very well until you realize that you have to give and take and you have to negotiate. And multilateralism is what we do at Ministry of Foreign Affairs, whether this is with the United Nations, with the World Trade Organization, with the World Tourism Organization. There are so many organizations in the world that manage our relationships, and that is our job as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But we also have to do so here in our region. We have the Africa Free Trade Agreement that helps us regulate our relationships in Africa. We have the East African Community that helps us regulate our relationships within East Africa. We have COMESA, which you have heard of, that helps us regulate our relationships also within Africa. Because for us to move our goods from point A to point B, we must be able to agree how that is going to happen. And all those issues, all those matters, all those treaties are negotiated between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other organizations and other ministries of foreign affairs of the world. Right now, we have one of the most remarkable communities. As you all know, in the 1960s and 70s, Kenya had the East African Community, which used to work very well. In fact, when I was a young man, to call Uganda was a local call. East African bus service was an East African bus service. You could go from here all the way to Kampala with the East African bus service. We had a single currency. The shilling was used in Tanzania, in Uganda, and in Kenya. We had East African Airways. We had East African Railways. All these were all within the East African Community. Unfortunately, when the community collapsed in the 1970s, because of superpower politics, because of our inability to manage our foreign space within the global world, we lost our community. And we have had now to spend years and years trying to rebuild our community. But now we're at the point where we have one of the strongest communities in the developing world, the East African Community. Recently, we increased, of course, the presence of the DRC, and now the East African Community stretches from West Coast to the East Coast. And this has been an overt program of the foreign policy of Kenya to increase the strength of the community, to make sure the community is strong, and to make sure that the community serves you. Now, members of parliament, one thing you must never forget is that the communities are an incredible, powerful engine of economic transformation. The European community has transformed Europe. Those of us who had traveled, who had the opportunity to travel as students in the 1970s, remember what Europe was like before the European community really came into its own. Some countries in Eastern Europe, people used to walk around with bare foot. Donkey carts were seen in European cities. Today, there is no such thing. And it is the coming together of the European Union that has generated the incredible wealth that has transformed Europe. The United States of America is actually a community of 50 states that has come together, and that has created one of the most powerful economies in the world. So we must aspire for the integration and the strengthening of the East African community. And it is one of the key drivers of our foreign policy. Because if we make this community successful, it will transform your lives. It will transform the lives of Kenyans, fundamentally. And I was very pleased to hear our new president reiterate his commitment to the East African community most recently. Let me talk about global and regional security threats for a minute. Because we live in a globalized world, part of our foreign policy is to focus on how we are going to deal with global threats. A lot of times we ignore things like climate change. But let me tell you, all of us know that if you go to parts of our country today, there is devastation because of drought or floods or other things that have been happening more frequently because of climate change. But let us also understand that climate change was caused by the industrialization of Europe and North America. Climate change is because of the greenhouse gases that were pumped into the environment by the industrialization of Europe and North America, not by Africa. But Africa is paying a very high price. But we, in our foreign policy, have decided to engage in this matter to make sure that we protect our interest within the context of global management of climate change. But we're also very interested in the issue of terrorism and violent extremism. I don't have to tell you what has happened to our country because of terrorism in the last, especially a few years ago before we got control of the situation. Terrorism remains a huge challenge for us. Every day we continue to manage that situation through our intelligence services, and I'm sure when the Director General of the Intelligence Services come here, he'll tell you about that. But we are also very interested in the issues of political conflicts and civil strife. There is no point of Kenya trying to develop in a community of countries that are in political strife, whether it is DRC, whether it is South Sudan, whether it is Ethiopia, whether it is Somalia. We live in a very difficult neighborhood. But it is in our foreign policy interest, it is in your interest to grow your economy, to make sure that Kenya becomes richer and stronger, that these countries find a way to make peace. We will never be able to enjoy the full potential of our country as long as our neighbors are suffering from political and civil strife. I could talk about issues of a humanitarian concern, but I will not. I think you understand those issues. But we've also seen about the recent COVID crisis. Foreign policy must also deal with these challenges. It is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs working with various strategic ministries like health and others that worked very hard to ensure that we all got COVID under control. It was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that negotiated to get those vaccines here in a timely fashion, because the West and other countries were hoarding those vaccines. It is us, and it is your Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we work for you, that we were able to make sure that we had more vaccines at the end of the day than we could actually use. We actually had an excess of vaccines in this country. Because of these reasons, we have come to understand that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs must also take cognizance, and our foreign policy must take cognizance of threats that are outside political sphere and focus on these threats that you see on that page. So, let's talk about the objectives of our foreign affairs policies. Primarily, the most important thing for us is to make sure that we have a peaceful and prosperous and globally competitive Kenya. Now, why? I already told you. If we don't have peace in Kenya, and if we don't live in a peaceful neighborhood, and if the world is at war, Kenya and you will not prosper. I'm sorry. We have already seen the consequence of the war in Ukraine on oil, on fertilizer, on the availability of wheat. It has been devastating. It has affected your pocket. It has affected your constituencies. That is why we are pushing for peace in Ukraine. We as Kenya, in any opportunity, whenever we get an opportunity to do so. We need to be globally competitive, which is why we make sure that all our treaties that we negotiate give us an advantage. Whether that treaty is with DRC, or that treaty is with Ethiopia, or with a faraway country like China or the United States, we must make sure that your best interest, our economy's best interest, is protected. That is part of foreign policy. Even though we work with the Ministry of Trade, with the National Treasury, with planning, we still have to play that central role to protect the interests of Kenya. That is why our mission is to protect, promote, and protect Kenya's interest and image globally. Image. Did you see how many presidents came for the inauguration? That is Kenya's image. They wanted to come here. They wanted to associate themselves with our success. And I was very proud of that inauguration. It was a remarkable inauguration that countries around the world, and particularly in Africa, are talking about even today. That is our image in the world. So our objectives are quite clear: to protect Kenya's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is part of the security framework of this country. I have to be involved in national security conversations because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has to engage with international partners to protect our national sovereignty and territorial integrity. We have an issue with neighbors with matters of sovereignty and territory, and we have to resolve those. We want to enhance regional peace and security. I already said this. We have to promote sub-regional, that is within Eastern Africa, and regional, that is within Africa, integration. The more integrated we are, remember, we don't have oil, we don't have gold, we don't have gas, okay? What we have is smart people. What we have is entrepreneurs. What we have is a very rigorous education system. That is why in this room, you have the most well-educated, the most exposed members of parliament on the continent of Africa. And that is a fact. Today I was listening to a program of MCAs on television, and they were telling each other how it is impossible today, and they were saying 3 elections ago, the MCAs, how many MCAs had to sign with Kidole because they couldn't write. Yes? And this last election, all of them, not only could they write, but the majority of them, it was in Murang'a County actually, are graduates. They are graduates. What does that tell you? That the intelligent quotient in our legislative systems, your legislative system, the MCA levels and up, has risen considerably in the last 20 years. This will have a direct impact on the ability of this country to manage its affairs. This is a very powerful thing. So, we want to advance the economic prosperity of Kenya and her people. We want to make sure our image and our prestige is at the best, which is why we try to look our best. We try to promote international cooperation, as I said, and multilateralism. We want to protect our interest here and abroad, and we want to enhance our partnerships with Kenyan and African diasporas. Never forget this. Black people are under siege all over the world. All over the world. That is why we build our relationships, not just with African people, but with the people of the Caribbean, the people of the Pacific, black people in America, black people in Europe. These are our constituencies. And the moment we use them to our advantage, we become very, very powerful. Very powerful. There's a country called Somalia that has an amazing diaspora. That diaspora has become one of the most articulate African diasporas in the United States of America. They are controlling and influencing legislation in the United States of America to the top. That has incredible impact and value for Somalia and for Somali people. And there is no reason why Kenya cannot do the same. So, these are the 5 interlinked pillars of our foreign policy. Your speaker was the architect of many of these when he was with us, and they still remain our key pillars: peace diplomacy, economic diplomacy, environmental diplomacy, diaspora diplomacy, and cultural and sport diplomacy. I already told you why we believe in peace diplomacy. I won't repeat that. You know, without peace, without stability, without having a peaceful neighborhood, we will not prosper. That's why we need peace diplomacy. That is why we joined the United Nations Security Council. Kenya has become highly respected in the world because of our prestige and because of our image. And people recognize the value of having Kenya and Kenya's thought leadership in the UN Security Council. And we have influenced outcomes from all the way from the Middle East, because we care about what's happening to countries that are not free. And we are caring about countries like the war in Ukraine, as I said earlier. And we have made our voice heard because it has impact on our lives and it affects our prosperity. That is why we joined the United Nations Security Council. And our candidature has become highly regarded. You will not believe this, but I will tell you whether you believe it or not. We have had European countries now requesting us to give them skills training on how to engage in the UN Security Council. I'm not even going to mention the African countries that we have been running programs for since we went to the UN Security Council. They have come to us. This is a sign of what I said about the intelligence quotient of Kenyans and how it's beginning to play out, the education, the training, how it's beginning to play out in the international space. And the UN Security Council has been a space that we have done that. We are also very effective in the AU Peace and Security Council, where Kenya has been asked to stay 3 terms more than is normal. Every time we say, haya tumemaliza kazi yetu, zamu yetu imeisha, tutataka kujiondokea, we are told, no, please, stay again. Let me also tell you that Kenya is one of the few countries, not just in Africa, but in the world, that consistently pays its dues. That consistently pays its dues, not just to African institutions, and I mean every single one of them, from the East African Community to the AU, but to the entire United Nations system of over 100 institutions in the world. Hizo ni pesa zenyu, ni kodi yenyu inalipa. And you should be very, very proud of this country when it comes to what was being spoken about, its fiscal management and its monetary management. Again, I see Kenya from the outside. I compare Kenya, naangalia wengine nasema, lo, kama Wakenya wangejua, kweli wangejipa nini? Hongera na kongole nyingi, kusema kweli. It's an amazing country to be part of. Let us not forget that China is rich because of exports. Let me repeat myself. China is rich because it exports. The United States of America is rich because it has a huge internal market. It exports to itself internally, to other states within itself. But it also has a captive market in South America, in Europe, where it exports its goods and services. If you want Kenya to be rich, export. My friends, export. That is why Tanzania is so valuable to us. That is why Uganda is so valuable to us. That is why the DRC will become so valuable to us. That is why Somalia will become so valuable to us. If you can't export, you will be poor forever, no matter how educated you are. That is the reality. Kama hauna cha kuuza, hautapata biashara. It's as simple as that. That is basic economics. And that is what we must make sure in our economic diplomacy, that we create the environment for exporting our goods and services. We export our people, we export our produce, and if we do this well, we shall become rich. Bila mafuta, bila dhahabu, bila gas, we shall become rich. I already told you about environmental diplomacy. I don't want to repeat it. Here, it's about us engaging in making sure that we protect our environment. We are a global champion of these issues, and we are known because UNEP is here, because UN Habitat is here, and we are serious about environmental diplomacy. You already heard from the governor about our diaspora. Our diaspora is one of the most prolific and productive diasporas. They export and save and send home $310 million a month. That is more than we do with coffee, with tea, with nini. They're our #1 foreign exchange earner. Watoto wenyu, ndugu zenyu, dada zenyu, wako ng'ambo. We must protect and promote our diaspora. I was very proud to hear the president announcing that he's going to have a Ministry of Diaspora, because it takes that burden off of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and puts it where it belongs, where it can have dedicated support. It is not possible, nakwambia, it's not possible for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to manage diaspora affairs effectively. We have a Ministry of Labor. Hatutaenda hapo. So, we have a serious program on diaspora. But we also have culture and sports. This country has been under-leveraging. Yani, we have not maximized our power in culture and sports in the world. Look at Britain with their football. Look at little New Zealand with rugby. We have countries that have transformed themselves through sports. Their image in the world is driven, and they capture the imagination of young people through sports. We need to take sports seriously, ladies and gentlemen. It is a powerful engine of economic transformation. And we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs want to leverage this as much as possible for everyone. So you, as legislators, are not only involved in guiding us in managing our affairs, but you're also involved in treaty making and in treaty ratification. This will be your job. You'll be in those committees. There's 34 committees, I believe, in Parliament. 34. And some of those will have to deal with these issues, and I shall come back to that in a minute. I don't want to get into the steps, because you can have that during your workshops, but we have many steps to treaty ratification, which you will be responsible for in Parliament. And we expect you to engage. And I heard today, in the morning, I was listening to the speaker as he made his introductory comments, and one of the things he said was, please learn the Kenyan Constitution. The Kenyan Constitution is one of the most progressive and the most elaborate constitutions, again, not just in Africa, but in the world. You have an amazing tool, legislative tool, in the Kenyan Constitution. But one of the things it says is that if we ratify a treaty abroad, it becomes law in Kenya automatically. So please do not ignore our multilateral actions abroad. Because once we make a decision abroad, that treaty becomes law and enforceable in Kenya. It's part of the challenge of our constitution. But because of this progressive constitution, we have been able to transform our country in very, very important ways, including embedding peace when we have proper transitions now, without having to worry about people killing each other or hurting each other. Again, I will not get into the details of how you undertake disapproval and approval of treaties. You will have that in the workshops. I will, however, mention one committee out of those 34. In many countries in the world, there are about 3 or 4 parliamentary committees that are incredibly important. Sorry? Oh, 44. Yeah, committees. Ni nyingi sana. Now, there are about 3 or 4 that are so crucial. Okay? If you go to the United States of America, the Budget and Finance Committee, the man who sits or the woman on that and chairs that committee is an incredibly powerful individual. Because all the money, all the budget of that country goes through his or her hands. One of the other committees that is feared around the world and that is in all democratic legislative systems is the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee. This is a very powerful committee if it is used properly. It is a committee that can advance the interests of a country in very strategic ways. It is a committee that can make the country rich. Again, I have to insist that if you don't understand the role of foreign policy in empowering and enriching your nation, you will fail to understand how countries like, small little countries like Britain became global powers in the world. You will fail to understand why ministries of foreign affairs are usually ring-fenced in the security and defense framework of a country. You know, in Kenya, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is still treated like just any other ministry. This is a problem. And those in the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee have heard me complain about this many times. I hope this Parliament will rectify this issue. It is my wish. It is the most crucial committee in Parliament for oversight on defense and foreign relations affairs. It is highly confidential and strategic committee. It's a highly confidential and strategic committee to make very strategic decisions. It works closely with many of our international, our national partners, including intelligence, defense, and others. And we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs cannot operate properly without the support of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee. That is why I say I hope we will strengthen our relationship with this committee. Finally, I want to speak to you about a union that many of you will probably want to join up as part of your global membership of other parliamentarians in other jurisdictions around the world. It's called the Inter-Parliamentary Union. This is a union of parliamentarians like yourselves from countries around the world. You will learn a lot, you'll be exposed to a lot if you become effective members and participants in this union. There are others, this is just one. And this one is headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. As I said, it's a global organization of national parliaments, like your own. It's an avenue for parliamentary diplomacy, where you leverage other parliaments to bring advantage to your parliament and to your country. And it can help build international cooperation and create great connections for all of us. So by conclusion, let me just re-emphasize that our foreign policy defines Kenya's choices and actions in pursuit of our national interest. That is why it doesn't matter whether we are talking about miraa or whether we are talking about avocados or whatever, we have to be involved as foreign affairs. It doesn't matter because it is our national interest. And remember, it's about exports, exports, exports. No exports, no prosperity. If you're not exporting to Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, China, United States of America, you will not prosper. It's a simple equation. And therefore, we must continually align our foreign policy with our national priorities. as determined by our domestic policies, because it's about building our domestic prosperity. I'll remind you that the National Assembly approves or disapproves the ratification of all treaties that guide our work and that help us manage our international relations. I'll also remind you that Defense and Foreign Relations Committee is crucial. It's a very important committee to achieving Kenya's foreign policy. And finally, parliamentarians can engage with other parliamentarians, and you will become an integral part of our work with the United Nations, with the African Union, with the East African Community, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Pierce. Another round of applause for Ambassador Macharia. We will take comments and questions for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Makali Muli will be number one. The lady at the end will be number two. Is that Honorable Naomi Wako? Yes. I will jump to the next level. The Honorable Member shaking his hand at the back. That's number 3. Which way? I'll give to the Honorable Member from, is it Mandera? Mandera, number 4. I need a lady, an honorable lady. I'll give the Honorable Member for Dagoretti North as number 5. We'll do 2 rounds. And please have 1 question or 1 comment so that we can have as many of us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Yeah, my name is Makali Mulu. I'm the MP for Kitui Central. I want to start by appreciating the presentation. It's quite informative. During this week and the last 1 week, Honorable Speaker, and the PS, we've seen a lot of issues relating to Kenyans suffering out there, more so in Saudi Arabia and the surrounding countries. I just want to know, is it that what I would call our relationship with them, or our diplomatic relationship is not well, I'm looking for the right word because I don't want to be, because it's very hurting. It's very hurting when we see what our people are going through there. So can you just comment on that matter? What is happening? What are we not getting right as a country? That our people go out there, they go suffer, when we are saying as a ministry, you are championing the interests of Kenyans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 2, Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And may I also appreciate Bwana PS for his very good presentation that has opened up our minds. My first question has been asked because that was really burning in me. But together with that, I wanted also to ask something on child trafficking or human trafficking to all the countries around, and those people go through a lot of suffering. Thank you. What we can do so that we can reduce the problems, the challenges that they are going through, and they are human beings, especially the Part B now, that about on child trafficking. There are others who are taking advantage, and Kenyans are going through a lot of challenges because of that. Thank you.
The Honorable number 3. Yeah, the Honorable Member at the back.
Myself.
Here. The Honorable Member behind you. He's the one who caught the eye first.
Thank you, Mr.
Undo, you will be recognized next round.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Geoffrey Kiringaruku, Mbeere North. Mr. Pierce, there is issue of honorary consul, which can play a great role in advancing trade as well as diplomacy. I understand there are quite a number of pending issues at your desk as far as honorary consuls are concerned. Number two, we have quite a number of missions in Africa which are quite dilapidated. You face it and you wonder whether our country is represented in that manner. Does it mean Kenya is so poor in taking care of diplomats and enabling them to advance the trade within African countries, especially if you go to Kinshasa? You realize the image is not very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it to Honorable Elachi, who is closer. You will be the last, because the microphone is much closer to where she is than where you are. Mheshimiwa Muya will have another round. We'll come to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. PS, thank you for elaborating the whole program of not really much, but just my question is one. We've seen the issue of Morocco and Sahrawi, and I think this is Parliament where some of these issues can come back and relook at legislation and ask ourselves what went wrong between Morocco and why are we in Sahrawi, and what were the reasons then and now. Why I'm saying that, you look at Morocco, we know that we can do a lot of trade with them. We know that our students used to go to Morocco and will find a friendly environment. And for now, as I know, having witnessed last year one of the students, I think there is need for us to just try and work around that relationship so that Kenyans who go there for trade in either of those countries do not find themselves in the heat that we have back home. Lastly is about the programs that we do, for example, teachers, nurses who go out of the country. Is there a way that now Parliament can be able even to audit so that every constituency in this country would say, within the 5 years, we've had students who came from this constituency and have benefited from the programs that government bring?
Honorable number 5. Actually, you are number 4, but now you're number 5.
I'm promoted. Thank you, Mr. PS, for the very elaborate presentation. I hope we shall have a few more of this. Mine is 2 very quick ones. The first one is visa denial by Americans and British for members of parliament going for official duties. Some members of parliament, some people, some of us, before we became members of parliament, were able to go into America and out so easily. But after having becoming a member of parliament, you are denied. Efforts to write to your office, no, still nothing is happening. What can we do about it? Number 2, some members of parliament here belong to other unions, like the one you have recommended, maybe Interparliamentary Union, but the Eastern African Parliamentary Alliances, the African Parliament. And when we make trips with those other parliamentarians, they have what is called diplomatic passports, and they get very easy pass. But the 1 or 2 Kenyan member of parliament with them, since it doesn't have a diplomatic passport, is retained there for a while, questioned there and there, and it is very embarrassing indeed. What can we do about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Balozi. You can deal with those, then we do another round.
Yes, thank you very much. Honorable Mulu,
Saudi Arabia. Let me first of all say that we have millions of Kenya in the diaspora. Number one. Number two, we have, as I said earlier, over $310 million a month coming from the diaspora. Our diaspora experience is an exciting and positive experience. It's very important we never lose sight of this. Why do I say this? I say this because the number of unfortunate stories, and they are tragic, and we've had deaths. I don't want to be quoted because the number can vary, but between 80 and 100 deaths abroad every year. But against 3, 4, 5 million people in the diaspora, it is the kind of death rate that you would find at home anyway. That's number one. Number three. Number four, in a country like Saudi Arabia, we are facing a special challenge. And I have brought this up many times to our committee, the committee I spoke about. And you've heard me speak about this in public. I have said that there are some places where culturally, unyenyekevu ule ambao unahitajika kazi zingine za nyumbani, sio unyenyekevu ambao unapatikana sana kati ya watu wetu. So sometimes our people will not be so subservient. And when they go to these countries and they're under contract, and in a country like in Saudi Arabia, their traditions around housework are very ancient, let's put it that way. So you find that the people who suffer the terrible beatings, the people who suffer abuse, are usually people who are of that category, house helps. But in that same country where we have over 100,000 Kenyans working in different capacities in hotels, in transport, in taxis, we have no problem. So we have to ask ourselves, are we exporting the right category of personnel? And do they have the right capacity and training to understand that culture before they leave and go and work there? So we have a problem there. The Ministry of Labor is a ministry I have tried to work with very hard on this issue. And if they ever come here, please ask them this question. Why? It is the Ministry of Labor that prepares people to go for these jobs in the Middle East, not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In fact, many of them don't even register with us. It's only when there's a problem that they loop back because the ambassador is there. So it's a challenge. But I urge you to really be careful that as we deal with this problem, we don't destroy this amazing opportunity that we have for jobs and job creation for young Kenyans in the Middle East. It is a huge opportunity, and it is hundreds of thousands of Kenyans who are in Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. But we no longer have this problem so much of deaths and abuse. Bado tunang'ang'ana na Saudi Arabia. It's a good issue. The second issue, Honorable Naomi, is similar. Child trafficking and women trafficking. Let's not forget. There are some countries where we have many of our women now engaged in prostitution and other exploitative behavior. In a country like India, they are mainly tricked by agents here in Kenya who trick them to go. And they are told they are going to work, maybe as house helps or whatever. And the people who they find at the other end are not even Indians. They are other Africans from, I guess we are in a secure space, in countries like Nigeria, okay, who are managing our women in brothels in a place like India. Okay, good, because those we need here in a tatizo now. Wengi wao, they are businessmen who are trying to get a cover of diplomatic relations. So we need to manage those very carefully. But we have a few. The ones abroad actually is not such a big challenge, especially if it's a country where we don't have an ambassador, where we don't have presence. We actually look forward to having them. But we have to make sure that it's the right person. And so that process does take a little bit of time. And you're right, I think there's about 3 or 4 that have been sitting on the minister's desk for a while, but we're still trying to process them. So you're right about that issue. Tutaishughulikia. Now, on the dilapidated embassies in the DRC, I was just there 2 weeks ago. We've come up with a solution, you're right. The problem is that we took so long to make up our minds about how we're going to use those embassies that the ghetto found us. As the country grew, you know, I don't know how many of you have been to DRC, but my God, this country has grown exploded in growth. Lakini ni ile growth ya slums. Na vichochoro, tuseme ukweli. So that has grown into the city. So where we used to have, ni kama vile Kileleshwa, ikabiliwe ni Kibera. It just grows into the place. And then your embassy is there. And then now you're stuck. What do you do? So we are now in the process of negotiating to move, to give up that land, to be allocated new land somewhere else, and to build. But let me tell you what is the real problem, and we've discussed this in the Foreign Relations Committee. The big problem is that we are not able to get our money ring-fenced. PESA's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is issued every year. And you see, the problem with that is that our commitments for building are multi-year. You can't build an embassy in 1 month or in 1 year. So you need commitments that will roll over to the next year. So if you don't get your money guaranteed for the next year, what happens? You stop building. If you look at Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia, and you look at their embassies in the world, utalia ukiona zetu. Because they have ring-fenced the resources of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So once you make a decision, you're going to build, that money is available to you year in, year out, until you finish building, according to your budget. The money is not taken away because kuna tatizo la budget this year, or because another priority has come up. It's a serious problem for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are not able to secure our assets because we are not able to secure predictable budget. Hiyo ndio shida yetu. Madam Elaki, Morocco, Sahrawi, we have a simple issue here, which has been overcomplicated by the politics of North Africa. It's a simple issue. The United Nations and the African Union believe in the protection of people's rights to freedom. This country became free because we used to be in what they call the Trustee Council of the United Nations. Okay? There is a council in the United Nations from the days of Ukoloni that has been helping countries become free. Kenya was there, Tanzania was there, Uganda was there, all of us were there one time. Over the years, we have found our freedom from our colonial master. In the case of Sahrawi, it used to be called Spanish Sahara. It used to be a Spanish colony. Bahati yao mbaya, when the transition came, the Moroccans managed to negotiate a protectorate over Sahrawi. Kama vile Britain ilikuwa protectorate over Tanzania. But when Tanzania began to fight for its freedom, Britain did not say, lazima ikae kwetu. Challenge ya Sahrawi ni ya kwamba Morocco has retained oversight and control over Sahrawi. And let me tell you, Sahrawi is rich. Phosphates. Hiyo fertilizer ambao tunasikia, mjue inatoka wapi? Okay? So we have a challenge. Morocco is a very successful economy, very successful. They have done very well for themselves. Okay? They are a good, it's a royalty. And we have a good relationship with Morocco. There's even an ambassador here. Okay? But already we made a decision that we as a country of liberation cannot decide that we don't care about liberation because we are now free. Sasa, hiyo ndio challenge, changamoto yetu tunasema na Kiswahili. Because we have to decide how we reconcile our liberation credentials against our relations with Morocco. And we also have to decide, which is actually more important, which is what the Deputy President said yesterday, that we must respect our commitments to the United Nations and to the AU. And those commitments are to protect countries like Sahrawi so that they find their way to freedom. And there is a framework to negotiate that within the AU and the United Nations. So we have remained there. Hiyo ndio changamoto yetu. It's not easy. We will find a solution, but we respect Morocco. We uphold Morocco. We believe it is a country that we can do amazing business with, and it is a country with great promise, Morocco. But at the same time, we cannot abandon a country that has gone through what we went through and say, sasa najiondokea, hiyo shida ni yenyu. Remembering that Kenya is highly regarded. Our image in the world is tied to the image that we are a country that believes in the principle of freedom and liberation. That principle is the principle that gives us all freedom to be who we are. Let me also now talk about teachers and nurses. You're right, but that question is better asked to the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health. But I will tell you this, because we negotiate those treaties. Believe you me, when we negotiate those things, we don't negotiate with counties in mind. We negotiate with Kenya in mind. And when we're given 20,000 nurses by Britain, or 50,000 teachers by country Y, it is then the Ministry of Education that has to undertake the challenge of identifying and deploying those teachers, or the Ministry of Health. Sisi kazi yetu ilikuwa ishaisha as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that is the challenge. But I agree with you that we need a fair hand, because those spaces are for all Kenyans. Yeah? Honorable MP for Mandera, visas. Asa, the truth of the matter is that this is a challenge that is causing a lot of headaches for them. If you ask the Americans today, what do they tell you? Or the British? That they were undone by the COVID crisis, by which they mean that they had such a huge backlog of people wanting to go to America. All those visas and passports that expired during those 2-3 years of COVID. Suddenly those people from Europe, China, wherever, suddenly, and there are millions, wanted to get their visas and to go to where? To America. So suddenly, these people who had the same clerks working to issue the visas were overwhelmed. So that is their first story. Tulia kidogo. There's some truth to that story, because how many of you have been to Europe? Have you noticed they're not able to process people through their airports? Their airports are in crisis. Why? Because they hired private sector to handle the processing of people at airports. When COVID came, what happened? The passenger travel plummeted, right? When passenger travel plummeted, the private companies fired the people. Why do you need security guards and people doing A, B, C, D if there's no passengers? When transport and travel came back, they did not hire quickly enough, and they did not train quickly enough. So suddenly, they had a lot of passengers, but no capability to process them through airports. Crisis. They are solving it. Now let me tell you the other challenge, which is probably the one you want to point me to. The governor was here just now. What did the governor say? He said that you are now a what? A PEP. I think that's what he called it. A politically exposed personality. Once you become a member of parliament, once you become a highly active political actor, you don't have to be a parliamentarian. Just your Twitter handle has got 1 million people. Huh? That is enough to trigger the fact that you are now a politically exposed personality. Which means, because of the US legislation, which was put there in the Obama years, that they are now keeping an eye on people who are politically active, not just for money, which is what the governor was speaking about, but also for political activity. And therefore, your visa is now referred to Washington. So you go there with your shemegi anapewa visa yake, anajiondokea naenda America. Wewe ni mdosi kutoka parliament, unaambiwa you wait. And once it goes into reference, it now joins a long queue. Sometimes you can take 3-4 months. You even give up and go and take your passport. So this is a challenge we're facing. The other thing which is stopping now, but since we are in a free country, I can speak my mind, they were beginning to use visa for their own national interest. Okay? See, I told you foreign policy is about projecting your national interest. They were beginning to use visas for their own national interest. You see? So if I don't like Honorable Kainan, naanza kumfinya. Comes ask for a visa, ambia ngojea kidogo ndugu yangu. Sorry, it's been referred. Sorry, there's a backlog. Sorry, there's this. Sorry, there's that. Before you know it, you've given up. Whatever you are going for, imepita.
Thank you,
This is
Balozi.
the fact. And I think that's it.
We'll
Diplomatic
do-
passport for people, we can talk about that.
I had promised Oundo and Muya. I'll pick Banning. Who is Banning? Kiminini? Kostirani? I am Mheshimiwa, the lady at the end, and then I'll give the honorable member for Kericho. Those are 5. So we'll have Muya 1, Oundo 2, Kiminini 3. The honorable member at the end, the ladies from, no, behind you.
Kwale.
Excuse me. Kwale?
Mombasa, sorry.
Mombasa. Yeah, you will be number 4, and we'll give 5 the distinguished lady from Kericho. I will close with the honorable architect from Kitui. Is it Central? Mwingi Central. Those are 6. Okay, number 1. Number 1, where's the mic? Muya number 1, Oundo number 2. Where's the mic? You'll distort the order. Let's start with number 1, number 2 on.
The members haven't learned the standing order, so they may not put me out of order. Thank you. Ambassador Kamau, you mentioned quite a bit of East Africa, and having served in East Africa Parliament, I have 2 questions. I'll make them brief. You talked of Kenya, or rather the community, being very proud when we shared transport through rail, East African Airlines, the common shilling, which is our third pillar now in the region. Actually, we have ended our term when we have finished every bill, be it statutory bill on monetary union. So we are about to have a common currency again. I think is good information to the members. The East African shilling that we are about to have by 2024 or thereabout. My question is, the treaty hasn't been amended, at least for the time I know, since its re-establishment. 8 years back, there was an attempt to start the amendment. As a country, and a very strategic country in this block of this East Africa community, we are still struggling with the issues of consensus. You know, one minister will decide not to come, then the motion collapse. We are still struggling with the issues of remittance. You have clarified that Kenya owns its obligation 100%, that I can attest, because were it not for Kenya, even members in East Africa would have gone hungry. But you find a country which never remit for even 20 years, for even 25 years, even ever the time the country joined the bloc, it never remit and nothing happens. We are still struggling while Kenya wishes to pay more but have more say. But because of geopolitics, you find some other countries lobbying better than Kenya, so that we cannot have that treaty being amended. Now my question to you, Kenya being the big brother, and it has been misused by this big brother syndrome, why are you not having the capacity to do lobbying presently to the 6 nations, which are the neighbors, besides Congo has come on board? Why are you not having that capacity to lobby these neighbors, namely Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, and others, so that at least we can amend this treaty so that we take the region forward? Then the second one, I have many, but I'll just do 2. How strategic are we? How strategic are we as a country? Because when you look at the organs and institutions of East Africa, most of them, be it Kasoa, Ayuswea, all the institutions, the major ones are based in Uganda, at least a few in Tanzania, while in Kenya, we only boast of LVBC. How strategic are we in lobbying these institutions? For example, are we lobbying now to have the East African Central Bank in Kenya? And if the governor was there, I would sneak a question of the Ministry of EADB, the East African Development Bank, which we have tried to audit or to oversight for my last term, 4.5 years, and we haven't succeeded. Who are the owners of this East African Development Bank? Thank you.
Your neighbor, Honorable Undo.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Ambassador. I want to ask on the issue of trade. You have